Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 288. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge on the comic forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. Sean, get that rag off of my face, so says the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, and the Duke of You-Know.
How's it going, eh?
On this episode, we're going to be talking about Grifter, issue number 4, where the rag thing comes from. We're also going to be talking about Mr. Terrific, issue 4, The Shade, issue number 3, and the very awesome The Ray, issue number 1. We also have some listener voicemails. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. I want to shout out our sponsors for this episode, DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. We're at the end of the month and actually the end of the year, so I just wanted to really give a personal thank you for both of those websites for continuing to sponsor our show. Over at DCBService.com, that's your pre-order source, and coming up in January, you are going to find all of the amazing new deals on monthly issues, trades, hardcovers, toys, statues, really anything geek culture related you can get from DCBService.com. And remember, if you're buying any of the digital from Comixology, remember to do it through DCB Services portal, because you get an extra 5% discount just from doing that from DCBService.com. I also want to shout out InStockTrades.com. They're still doing their Cyber Monday sale. Everything's like 42% off or more. They have deals up to 80% off on clearance items. It's a great opportunity to shop there, you know, especially right now with the holidays being over. Just amazing discounts that are being offered from InStockTrades.com. So make sure to head on over to their site and see the stuff that above and beyond their normal discounts that they're offering. And remember, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. So I want to thank InStockTrades.com and DCBService.com for continuing to support our show. James, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler show. We go in-depth in the plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on the show. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
You almost flubbed in whatnot.
Yeah, I
know. Like, that's your tagline.
It's funny. I'm hearing more people say whatnot in television, just general discussion with just people around me. I'm noticing it more, and I'm like, yes! It's starting to happen.
What? Okay, I gotta ask. I'm gonna regret asking this.
Yes,
what exactly is starting to happen?
It's my sinister master plan. Now, this is the whatnot behind, my world conquest.
The whatnot behind your world conquest.
Yep.
And I love that you use. I love that you.
It's coming. It's coming, man. 2012. It's the year of the whatnot.
Okay, what does that mean?
Exactly.
Okay, good. Let's talk some comics.
Through the magic alchemy of nature's most awesome sources of energy, Ray Palmer, atomic physicist, becomes the atom.
Jim, our first review this episode is going to be of The Ray, number 1. Writers are Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, penciler Jamal Igle, inker Rick Parada, colorist Guy Major, letterer Dave Sharp, assistant editor is Sarah Litt, and the editor is Kwanzaa Johnson. The Ray created by Jack C. Harris and Joe Quesada. This was interesting to me. I didn't know. I knew there was a new Ray series coming, and then eventually we saw the preview. But before the preview, I didn't know if this was going to be a reboot of, the current Ray, the one that we've been used to. There's actually been a couple different versions of the Ray that we've seen in comics recently. But, the main character stream that we've seen with Freedom Fighters is where I was thinking of with the Ray. I had no idea this was going to be a full reboot. I really like this kid.
Oh, yeah. It's funny. For some reason, this series, there's stuff that normally would annoy me that I'm enjoying in this. There's and it's weird because, there's some stuff I'm like, oh, that was really cool. And then as I'm thinking that was cool, I'm like, wait, if this had been somewhere else, I probably would have been annoyed by that. And what I'm talking about is some of the stuff that they skip over and they just make a quick reference to. Some of the personal, the human side of his interactions and his dealings, normally I want to see that. I always want to, get into that. I'm like, that's the stuff that really I enjoy about a comic book and I enjoy about it. But for some reason, because of the limited series, because of the way they said they acknowledged it and they're skipping over it, I enjoyed it. And I was like, you know what? They're embracing it, and it's part of this character's style that there are some big stuff that he's skipping over. He's like, you don't want to see that. I'm like, yes, I do. I do want to see that.
Oh, see, I'm going to go completely the opposite direction and say that I adored that.
Yeah.
What I thought was really great was he was basically saying, you hear this same old story all the time. We're not doing that here. I found that completely refreshing. What I really liked about the story was the whole narrative's done from the perspective of the Ray. Really important in this 4-issue series for us to get to know this character and to feel like he's our buddy. And it's really important to do that out of the starting gate. Because this is a guy who, I honestly, I'll say 1 issue in, I'm really hoping that this continues with the same momentum and that there's a shot at this becoming a series. Because this guy is reminding me of what I liked about All New Adam and also what I liked about Blue Beetle. He's fresh, he's fun, he's exciting, he's accessible. I love that instead of just making him, a superpowered guy whose powers are light, I shouldn't say just making him that. I think they embraced that and really told us what that means and differentiated him from other characters. Like, I loved when he was learning to fly.
Yeah.
The fact that he was trying to fly and mimic other heroes that he'd seen. And specifically reference characters like Superman, for example, and how he flies. But that won't work for him. And I've never seen that. Maybe that is something that's part of the Ray's history. I don't know. I read the Ray's solo series before, not every single issue, but a lot of it. I don't remember that being an explanation, but that's not to say that it wasn't there. Whatever, I'm really glad that they embraced it here. Because it's something that I like, that I feel like this is a different character. I also love the whole bit with the costume and clothes. Mm-hmm. Like, that this guy doesn't have clothes, per se, because his powers keep burning them away. He had to find a way to use his powers to have modesty. So that way people who were looking at him would see, otherwise he's going all Dr. Manhattan on us. And I really liked, though, that was something that it wasn't like he had to find some kind of, again, getting away from the idea of you've seen this before, which was a lot of his narrative. I love that was embraced in his costume. That this is something that he has to concentrate to do. And if he wants civilian clothes and street clothes or civilian appearance, things like that, what I'm going to be curious to see, talking about the human interactions, we skipped a lot of stuff that really isn't necessary. We got to the meat and potatoes that we really need to know about him, and getting to the human interaction that I'd like to see from here on forward. I'm going to be curious to see what his relationship with his girlfriend's going to be like. If he burns his clothes, how does it work with touching other people? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and I find that stuff, how does he have to concentrate from that? Has there been a learning curve with that? What is that like? And what does that mean for a relationship where he's got this girlfriend that he adores, who I really liked? And that was something that it stood out to me and engaged me right away in this series. The guy's really likable.
Oh, yeah. And his support cast is outstanding. I really liked how they pulled everybody into this. And as you said, I'm 1 issue into this, and I want more. Mm-hmm. And I want the series. I want ongoing. And I want this creative team to handle it because they're making him fun. They're making him really cool and readable. And it's funny because those opening sequences, when he was flying, I love the fact that as he's going, he's trying to process it. His brain started picking up speed, but just what was reflecting him? A simple mirror on the car reflected him up into the air. Then he hits the bottom side of the plane, and the reflective surface of the plane reflects him back down. And it was just a boom, boom, bouncing around. And I thought that was a really cool thing on his opening power set. And he just went to take a step, and boom, he's off like a light. I was like, dang, that was cool.
But even the first page, it's like skyscraper window to skyscraper window to skyscraper window. You see him bouncing off of those things, which I just really loved. I also love the idea that his face and the whole visual imaging of him as the Ray, this costume set, he doesn't have to protect his identity because he has crafted a visual presence when he's the Ray that doesn't require a mask, doesn't need anything like that. The whole thing is a giant mask. I loved that. I mean, that was real. Why wouldn't you do that if you could do it with your powers? Very cool. And it's a great visual look. I really like the styling of the character. I like the visual presence of him. This is a book visually is very pleasing to me because it's really important art-wise with a character like this to use his power set as often as possible as a way to, add a style, a sense of the story. And this was something with this guy right out of the start. I'm like, wow, I'm actually looking for the surfaces he's bouncing off of. I love that. I mean, tiny little details like that I find real interesting. The costume is real sleek and fresh. I like that it like the whole power set and everything nods back to what I've seen before with the Ray, yet it's young, it's modern, it's today. And it's simple. There's something to be said from that. Sometimes there's too much accessorizing if you've got a good style sense and you can do sleek. This guy should look sleek. He looks sleek. Like, this is a car you want to drive out of the shop. You know what I mean? No, I mean that totally as a compliment. Like, this is something on television. You see this driving by, you got to go, wow, okay, I want that. There's something about that sensibility in this book that really works for the style of character. He should be sleek. He should be fast. Like a bullet. I mean, it's cool. I mean, I was very into it.
Oh, God, yeah. And this was one of those things where art and the story and the artwork just really meshing well together and really fitting the style. And it's even the superhero moments, I'm echoing and I'm nodding my head saying yes every time with everything you're saying, but even the outside of those hero moments, just the regular everyday, like that first opening sequence when he's on Hawaii after, powering down and he's standing there and he initially doesn't realize he's naked and he's kind of got, hey, how you doing? And they're like, your clothes? He's like, just that look of like terror, shock, on his face. I love just that whole sequencing, how it goes through those emotions. And I'm like, man, this guy, dude, you got an issue here.
One other thing I like, too, jumping back a little bit, I loved his internal commentary about life being ridiculous and random. Mm-hmm. Because that's true for everybody. I mean, I think I connected with that right away because how many times, you and I have conversations usually many times before we start recording about how ridiculous and random our day was. And I think that's something that we can all embrace because life is full of that. Whenever you're dealing with jobs or life or family or friends or whatever, that leads your day, the human factor makes things random. And this was something, the guy's talking about how this is a government experiment. This thing zapped out. They're now trying to trace all the potential side effects and damage along the way. The two-story tall lizard and the vegetation and stuff like that. And what happened with him, I really like that this was something where we didn't see him immediately get hooked up with a government operation. We didn't see him immediately have this mentor figure. The mentors wound up being his family and people closest to him that he knew he could trust. I like that. That was something that I found refreshing, too, and that this is a guy who really is using things, he's had some martial arts skills, but his family's background in yoga was something that enabled him to all of a sudden go, okay, yeah, my parents are quirky and all that, and he talks about them the way that we all would, because we all find, quirks in our parents. They come from a different, generation than we do. So there's going to be ways that we do this when we look at our parents that we're going to have this kind of grunting and groaning that we do. But deep down at the core, I love when he sits there and says, okay, I'm a little hard on them. The truth of the matter is if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be this guy. I'm like, I've had that conversation before. You know what I mean? You at some point in time, you pull back and say, my parents really are, the cat's meow when it comes down to it. I really do value their opinion, and they're going to give me that something because I know I can trust them. I know I can trust where they're coming from, and I know them so well that aside from the quirks and all that other nonsense that we talk about, these are people who are here for me. And I don't know, it's just something I really loved his real dialogue, real commentary. This is a real dude, a real guy This is somebody that I would love to hang with. And I'm saying that more and more with the New 52, that these are characters that I'd love to hang with. I love that I'm saying it with a fresh character right out of the starting gate. You know, there's something about that whole sequence. You talked about that whole sequence with him bouncing off the plane and the car mirror and stuff like that. You know, there's something about not just the visual styling of his powers, but like you said, in the day-to-day stuff, even when he was on the beach before he got zapped. You know, yeah. I loved, like, it looked like a beach I'd want to hang out with somewhere in California. Like, I've been to beaches like that in Venice and stuff like that. Even the background, you know, housing and stuff like that, it looks like a place like, hey, I want to be hanging out there. And that was great. You know, it was something that was neat about the whole setting and the background. It felt like this calm, peaceful vacation spot that, bam, went chaotic. It's cool.
Oh, definitely. And it's funny because, you know, when you see him those opening sequences with him and his parents, he's holding the guitar there, and even just the little quirks, the little comments, you know, talking about it, the mom's like, "Hey, you gonna sing us a song? Come on, I'm trying to be serious here." And I've had moments like that. Well, not exactly moments like that. I wasn't naked holding a guitar, but I've had moments where I'm trying to, you know, I need to either relay something, or I need, you know, that moment of seriousness, and you kind of throw out your family's throwing out little quirks, little funny comments, and just the general, you know, family nature of ribbing and getting along and just open dialogue where you don't have to worry about being political. You can be open, you can be honest, you can just be yourself. And I love just seeing that style coming through, because we see it in his parents, and also in the inner dialogue, we see it in him. So we see where he got his personality from. His traits come from his background. His traits come from his family. And I love the fact that he even acknowledges how good his parents are. He's like, yeah, they're quirky, but, you know, they're a stereotype out there, but they're a stereotype we need more of. And I love that line where he's like, we need more of these kind of people. We need the people who do think about, you know, the planet, and the hippies, and the you know, they grow their own food, they make their own clothes. Yes, they even own an electric car. I love just how he was, you know, embracing their quirkiness, but saying how good it was. And then you see his personality that he gained from them coming through. It was just a really great character development in a single issue, and even a character development in less than a single issue in a couple, you know, well-placed, well-written pages. You know, they got their definitely bang for their buck in this, because you'd have these cool character moments, then it'd go to him fighting the giant jellyfish, then it would go back to him and his girlfriend, more action with the jellyfish, back and forth, and I just loved how this pace kept flip-flopping back and forth between the two, and it told a story. It gave me action, gave me comedy, it gave me what I want in a comic. I enjoyed it fully, you know, further development of the character. I'm looking forward to the new villain. I'm looking forward to seeing more of this guy, and I hope he does stick around.
But how did you feel about the book?
You know, I'm on the fence. Yeah, you know, this is, and it's funny because when they first announced the Ray, I was like, oh, okay, you know. And I read the opening, the sneak preview to it, and I was like, oh, okay, that looks kind of interesting. I didn't think I would be this passionate about this book until I really started I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. And this was a book that as soon as I read it one time, I went back and I had to reread it a second time, because then I really started looking for some of the art sequences. I really started getting more into it, and then I started thinking off page what this kid's life was like growing up with these two parents. And, you know, then you especially thinking about him and his girlfriend, probably how their relationship developed, and how, you know, where that came from. I was just like, there's so much stuff that I want to know more about this guy. This is the title that I really want an ongoing series, just so we can flesh out all these unknown factors with somebody who seems like a really cool hero.
See, I walked in with high expectations because it was Gran Palmiotti. And when I first heard about this series, I didn't know Jamal Igle was going to do the art. It wasn't until later that I knew that he was doing the artwork on it. So first I heard that Gran Palmiotti were doing the Ray. And for me, you give me Gran Palmiotti, you know, I mean, my Hawkman love that I've mentioned on the show many times really came from their run with Hawkman. And I really just gained a respect for their work. And then from that, I went back and got series like The Monolith and stuff like that. And, you know, things that I'd missed, Gran Palmiotti. And I've read their work outside. They've done some stuff like that has been reprinted at IDW and stuff like that. These are guys now I will follow their writing anywhere because they're just plain awesome. Then you put in Jamal Igle. That Meet the Parents page. I want to look at that real quick. And I mean, this is an example of what I love about Jamal Igle's art. This is a page where he's talking to his parents and his buddy. But what I love about Jamal Igle artwork is the motion that's in that sequence of events. You got Dad. He's like got that weird kind of like look on his face, like because the son's naked, sitting there with a guitar glowing. All right. I love Mom is sitting there in awe, but they're still snacking during all this. Like Mom, wait. This is a sign that I'm really digging the artwork. I'm watching the parents snack. You see Dad in the next panel. He's leaning over grabbing a chip, and then you see him. The chip is up. See, this is motion. It's motion that's going on. I love those tiny details. Because Jamal did not have to do this, but it's something to me. It caught my eye. My God! In each panel, he's continuing the motion of the snacking and everything that's going on. These are background things that give us a sense of movement and motion. That's why I'm like, Sean? Why are you so focused on the dog snacking? The reason why I'm so focused on the snacking is I really appreciate an artist who does this visual cinematic sense of, okay, these characters are moving. Even though they're not, these are static panels that are just flat, they're flat, but this is an artist who's given us a sense of motion all the way through. Even from the way he's moving, as you're going through. There's a consistency in he's standing, he starts slouching over in the next two panels when he's talking. Everybody has a continual sense of motion, from the parents to the buddy, to them reacting to each other. That's the kind of stuff that I really love. And one page just really made me appreciate it. And it's not an action page where you normally would expect to be seeing a lot of motion. But I love that that's the page that stood out for me, because it's such a bizarre page for me to go, wow, I really appreciated that. And I did. I was into the snacking. But I mean, it really is a testament to, I was paying attention to the facial features, but I love, that's usually the first place I go because I'm not an artist. And I usually appreciate that the most. I love that with Jamal's work, I've noticed more and more that I don't just look at what he does with the face for reactions. I look at all the motion all the way through. So I thought it was really important to note there that this is a guy who just keeps the page moving all the way through, and you're constantly getting this sense of, whether it's in your face or it's something subconsciously that's going on, he makes it move like a film strip, and it's really cool.
Yeah, it is funny because on those same pages, and even a couple later on with the Shanti, situation, I was looking at the background of the house and just how really colorful and how just trippy, psychedelic. How they got the paintings on the ceilings painted with some cool designs all along the wall. They have like the flower type of designs and hearts and shapes and stars and just the various kind of just changing it around. And it always makes me laugh that the detail that we get in the backgrounds. And these are not major critical things in the story. They could have made a plain wall, but that wouldn't fit these parents. That wouldn't fit their style of behavior. So, they're going to make it a little bit different. They're going to make it colorful. They're going to make it, just that fun, expressive society that these two people would live in, And it was just, second, third read-throughs, looking at art, just studying just the calmness that the mom is sitting there. And, later on when she's telling Shanti what happened, it's very just calm. Hey, yeah, he got hit by an experimental ray. Okay. Now he's glowing. And I was just like, yeah, that would just be open, boom, drop it. No thinking, no.
But what I loved about that is it wasn't like even her sitting down and telling her. Yeah. She was just walking by.
Right.
And... it was just because she heard the comment, "You are glowing, talk now." Well, he didn't have a chance to. I love that. It was just such a great sequence of events. But what's really important about that is, and it was something I really appreciated about this book, sometimes you get a little too crazy with the explanation, and you don't get to know the character that well. When you were talking earlier, before we really got into the book, about how they kind of sped through certain things, I actually found that completely refreshing. I think that actually improved the pace of this book. And I really felt like this book cooked. I felt like I was constantly from page to page, like really being pulled through just this great joyride. It moved like a bullet, like the Ray is. And I think that's where that whole style came from with me. It just was a nice, great, fast-moving, really enjoyable book that I paged through multiple times just because I really loved the ride. Like, this is a world, like, I really was ready right at the end of the issue for issue. Like, I mean, come on, issue 2, let's go. Come on.
Yeah.
You know, what do you mean this is monthly? Can we get this weekly? What do we got to do? You know, it's 4 issues. We can get this all done in a month, right? I mean, and that's a sign of an interesting title when you really want more right away. I do encourage people, and I know we're going to continue talking about this, but I really want to tell people, if you didn't pick this up, it's only a 4-issue mini. You know, and you can grab issue 1, see if this is a book for you. This is a title, it's really on my short list now of books that I really want to see. And I don't want this as a series of miniseries. I want this as a monthly.
Amen.
And to me, that a series of miniseries is too much of a chance of this getting lost or something like that. I really would like that. I wish it was actually launched as a monthly instead of being launched as a mini, because it's ready to go. This is a good book.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And when in the beginning of the episode, I was saying the exact same thing you're saying, that I loved that part of this. Normally, I was saying something like that would annoy me, but with the Ray, it fits so well and everything jives so well that I enjoyed that factor, that they did skip over that stuff, that they did do it that way because they embraced the skipping over it. They didn't try to, make it, a quick montage sequence. No, he just says, yeah, you don't want that. You don't want that. And they jump and they boom, 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 continue the action going on and continue the energy. Normally, gaps like that would have annoyed me, but it so fit the way the story's being told that I completely agree with you. That was an awesome part of this.
See, I've never seen that done before like that. See, and it didn't read to me at all like gaps. It read to me as, I felt all the way through. We were riding with him, and his narrative was taking us through, so we were really inside his head. There was no gaps. There was nothing jumpy about it. It was smooth, sleek. And, I mean, the whole issue read that way. And there was something I liked the pacing and the style. I haven't seen it done that way. And I really loved that it was done through, it was a great marriage of just great dialogue and cool visuals that were pulling you through at that pace. Because that dialogue was really essential for him to say, you've seen all that before. I haven't seen that done where they're talking to the reader in a way where I like when you break that wall without going too far. You know what I mean? He's not going all ambush bug in the way that he's doing it. It's clear that he's talking to any friend he's telling this story to. It could be his buddy on the couch, could be Shanti, anybody that he's talking to. I don't necessarily feel that he's really talking to the reader, but dialogue-wise, it makes me feel like I'm one of his friends. Yeah. And that's really essential and important in this series. I really like this guy. It's been a while since a new character has really captivated and engaged me. I'm talking about a brand new character from the ground up. This is a brand new guy. And this is somebody, like, I want to see him on a team because I think that might be a way to get some more interest into him, in the sense that I don't know what this did numbers-wise or anything like that, and I don't really pay a whole lot of attention to that myself, but being that it's a miniseries, I'm going to assume it's not doing as, it didn't do number-wise like what, like an Aquaman did, for example, because you got a Jeff Johns on it, and there was the high hype to this. This book, I would love to see this character be on a team just to get people maybe check out the miniseries that haven't, and I really think this is one of the essential reasons why we've got to have this, podcasts and blogs and stuff like that. If you read this and liked it, please let people know. It's a lot of times there's people that will, shoot to websites and start complaining about this book, that book, and the other book. To me, this is a book that let's embrace this baby and get some people to read it, and let's demand a monthly. I want a monthly. And it's really, we've talked a lot about the New 52. A lot of titles that I'm really liking and digging. There's a very short list of titles that made me feel this way. This is in that short stack of, like, this could easily become very quickly for me, if it was a monthly, a top 5 title for me. I'm that into
easily.
This character right now.
Oh, big time. And it's the great thing, it's not just the character, it's the cast.
Yes.
I love how they're all just going with the flow and they're all understanding and they're all dealing with it. You can tell that, they are affected by it, but they're not freaking out by it. They're not being, psychotic and adding to the problem. I love the fact, with the girlfriend, how she's like, my parents already have a hard time that the fact I'm dating a non-Hindu. If I'm positive, if I bring a naked Korean boy home, I'll be disowned. I love just that dialogue right there. She could have very easily been over the top, gone, crazy with this circumstance she's dealing with, but there's still some humor going on in there, and there's still some real emotion there. I love that.
See, and that's a lot of that stuff that you were saying, like, would normally be gaps. Something. There is no gap. That's the way it's being delivered. It's not that it's not there. It's being delivered through their dialogue, through their interactions. We're getting to know these people along the way through them being together in sequences that make sense, in sequences that matter. We're seeing the real reactions play out, and that makes sense to me to do it this way. We'll get to know everything along the way. Do it this way. It works really well, and to me, it adds a lot of personality, charm, and excitement to this book. This is a book. I hesitate to use the word charming because it always seems like if you say that word, it's not a strong enough word. That's something I think this book puts a smile on my face.
Yeah.
It's fun. And that's, fun to me is the single number one most important factor for any comic, whatever. If I'm going to keep coming back, it's fun. This will be on my short list of reread again and again. This is something that if it only goes to a 4-issue miniseries, I will pull out this mini from time to time and read it just because I got a feeling 2, 3, and 4 are going to give me this same vibe, and I'm going to be really sad if this doesn't continue on into something else.
Yeah, this is, definitely. And it's funny because, I'm picking and choosing what I get in trade. This is on that stack. When they announce the trade, I'm picking this up just because I want everything together, and it'll make for easier reading. And it's, instead of having to pull out the issues, I'll just pull off the trade off the shelf and reread it periodically because, it's funny, as you're saying, fun. That keeps coming back to me, but it's even beyond just fun. It's just, this is the kind of stuff I want in my comics. This is what I want to read. This is, right here is a good example of what I find to be, a top tier book. And this is, a 4-issue limited series. And I'm like, hopefully I want more. And, these are always the things that I get worried about. And, I start thinking of, because you mentioned earlier, him on a team, that would be awesome, but part of me always worries about when you take these great characters and put them on a team, just because you got to share the spotlight, we won't get as much of this cool dialogue, this cool interaction.
No. I want him on a team too. See, and you misunderstood. Like, we had this discussion last episode too. I don't want him just on a team. I want him on a team, so maybe that team book, like, Justice League's going to have an expanded cast, right? Justice League International, whatever. I guess this guy wouldn't work in International because he's, trying to keep. I love that he's trying to keep a secret identity. He's done it. He's established it. So why would you go on International where you have to reveal yourself? If you follow me. So International wouldn't be the right team for him. I would say Justice League or something like that. Maybe I don't know if would he fit on Teen. Is he too old for Teen Titans?
Yeah, he's definitely too old.
Yeah. So
he's college age plus.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to see him on a team just for exposure purposes. I'm not saying that that's where I want to see him appear after this mini. I want to see him appear after this mini in a solo series and on a team book because I want people to check him out. So that's where it's really, I'm that enthusiastic about the character that I want, I'd love a double dose of him each month. If it's a choice between solo and team, I'm amen 100% with you. I just want a solo title because I want to follow this cast. It reminds me, All New Adam is probably the most sincere compliment I can give this title. It reminds me of books like that. Reminds me of books like The Shield. Stuff. Well, these are characters who, that recent first wave, The Spirit, which I think was the highlight series out of the first wave. These are books where there's a lot of personality, great supporting cast, unique development of them. This is in that category of, and I fear for this title because it's, you know, a lesser known character and stuff like that, people might not have given it a shot. It's in that short stack of titles that make me just kind of go, Captain Atom, actually, the current Captain Atom, with its artsy style and its unique appearance and things like that. I think this is in that wheelhouse of really cool concepts. And another important element of this one that sets it, this Thaddeus Fillmore. We got to talk about that. What a great way. Wait till the end, start introducing this cool, like, different kind of villain. Very contemporary and current. You know, this guy's out doing his thing, trying to make a break, finds a great opportunity through his travels to learn about the Lazarus Pit, so you're pulling a DC hook in there. Apparently, there's footage of him attempting this. Now, tell me you didn't know the second Lazarus Pits was brought into this whole thing, that Fillmore either wasn't dead or, you know, I mean, we knew that Fillmore was still around and that he was going to be something more once that Lazarus Pit thing comes in. I'm very curious to see what happens here. Now, do you think this is the real Fillmore coming out of the film? Is this some kind of like, how is he coming out of the film reel? What happened there? Because I don't know of the Lazarus Pit doing something like that. So I'd love to know more. Like, there's nothing wrong with what they did here. We know that the Lazarus Pits will twist you. And what happens when you're already a quirky guy like Fillmore was? I'm very curious to see what exactly is up and what is the vibe here with this guy. It was cool.
Yeah, this dude was definitely a little bit bizarre. And it was funny because when they first introduced him, I'm thinking, okay, Indiana Jones style. And then you see it's not just that, because he's really was getting into the death footage and the various kind of freaky, creepy stuff. And just for having him come right out of the film like that, I'm thinking it's not actually quote-unquote him, but like an imagery of him. You know, the Lazarus Pit kind of, you know, took like a channeling some of his energy out, and that's what got captured on the film. And he may be somewhere else, or he may be dead, or just maybe how he survived. But I'm thinking it's going to be more of a light energy based, because he's dealing with a light energy based hero. So that's what I'm thinking. Somehow that's how Ray's going to be able to stop him and face him down. So it's, again, great introduction, last couple pages of the book, you know, and it was funny because right before this, we have kind of like this fun moment between, you know, Lucen and his buddy saying, hey, yeah, he took care of the giant, he took care of the giant, what are those things called?
Jellyfish?
Thank you. Jellyfish. You know, and kind of laughing and joking, and just a little fun moment between the two of them. And then you go right from that into this gruesome death, which turns into a very gruesome man. So really cool, you know, great way to bring in the new villain.
You know what I love? I actually think his powers might be becoming quickly my most favorite superhero mode of travel. Like, because I'm genuinely having fun seeing this guy find things to bounce off of. Yeah. I'm like saying to myself, boy, you know, if I was the Ray, that would be a lot of fun. I mean, you know, like to find things to bounce off to get from place to place. I mean, dude's got to be using a lot of angles and geometry and stuff like that. He's obviously an intelligent guy. But I love, like that whole sequence after he bounces off the ocean back to his job on the beach, you know, because he needs to have the job again. Yeah. You know, this isn't a paying thing. You know, nobody knows who he is. So I love the sequence that when he's up on there, I'm like, wait a minute. He's still not wearing clothes. Like, At no point in time, like, I mean, I don't know if there should be a warning label on this comic or most naked hero ever.
Well, that's why I kept laughing every time you kept saying exposure. You know, you want more exposure of the Ray. Mm-hmm. I'm like, really? I don't want more exposure.
Well, you can't possibly get more exposed. I mean, it's just a great book. I mean, this is one of those, the energy coming off of this title this was something that I didn't see the New 52 going this way. You know, where I was really worried, I think, more for the established characters and figuring that, like, I'm either going to really love what's happening to the established characters or I'm not. I didn't see, like, so many cool concepts being introduced, so much creativity coming out like this. And I'm actually disappointed in myself that I didn't see this coming, because it's one of the things that I think I liked so much about the universe before the start of the New 52 is the creativity. Now it's like really DC's taken off the limits. You know, at least it's appearing that way to me as a reader, where they're really embracing, hey, what are your pitches? What can we do with these characters? You know, here's a character we haven't done something with in a while. Who's got an idea for this? You know, what can we... I love throwing these things out there to see what sticks and what doesn't. And this right here is something that I hope sticks because it's a fun character. It's funny how it's a Jamal Igle book, again, on art. This reminds me of the excitement I had back when he was on Firestorm.
Yeah.
When he introduced Jason Rush and he was part of that whole thing. He jumped on that book and then he did a costume redesign and there was something really cool about that whole vibe back then. That was my first exposure to him as a creator. And, now we're on this book and it's a new character again. It's somebody who I'm like really behind with issue 1. And, I'm in that same place where this is somebody who really quick can jump. It reminds me of Animal Man. I talk about Animal Man, how crazy I am about that series. A series that solo-wise, Animal Man, I never saw myself really following Animal Man, and getting super hyped up, excited about him. This is one of those books. And
Amen.
Please, if anybody out there is reading this, love to hear your thoughts and feedback on it. And please, if you're digging this book like we are, blog about it. Get the word out. This is one of those books that needs an underground movement. Get it out there, okay? Because it's just, I want this. Do it for us. I want this book around.
Yes. We want more Ray.
Look at those strange little beetles. They look... Great neutron!
Our next issue will be The Shade, issue number 3. The writer is James Robinson. Artist Cully Hamner. Colorist Dave McCaig. Letterer Todd Klein. Cover artist Tony Harris.
This was
with Will Moss as editor.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to cut you off there. This is one I was like, so what do we follow up the Ray with?
Yeah.
And I'm like, for me, it's The Shade. This is another one of those where I'm going to very similar. This is a 12-issue miniseries. And the only thing that's not making me scream ongoing, I'm going to scream ongoing, because I think this guy's got limitless potential as far as storytelling goes. But I love the fact that we know James Robinson's going to be doing JSA. Yeah. And this all seems to be in the same wheelhouse. The Shade, JSA, all that stuff. I'm actually hoping that we find out, being that this is The Shade. I'm assuming this is set in the New 52, but I wouldn't care if this is set in the same world of his JSA series. And that we could see this Shade hanging with the JSA. Like, I don't know what that JSA series is going to be, premise is going to be, if this guy would fit in that wheelhouse of being in that world or not. Mm-hmm. But I kind of like the idea of let Robinson craft his own little world, especially if he's going to deliver work like this, because I really am loving this. Now, here's my question for you, because you and I are definitely, I know, in different places with our exposure to the Shade. Have you ever read the original Shade miniseries? Because I know you started getting the Starman omnibuses, and I think you got all those, but you haven't read them all.
Correct. And I haven't actually read the Shade miniseries yet, but I have an understanding of the character, and I know a little bit about him. But really, I have very, very little exposure to the character and to his universe and to the people around him. So for me, this was kind of a neat experience going into it. I had a little knowledge, and they always say a little knowledge can be dangerous. So going into this, it was a definite interesting experience where I was going through a nice roller coaster of emotions, and I actually stockpiled the first couple issues of Shade because I was reading all the other stuff. I was like, I just didn't have a chance to attack it, but now that I'm caught up with it, this, as soon as the next issue comes out, I'm grabbing it because this has just been a fun read.
Let me ask you a question. Did you feel like, because I've been under the assumption reading this, because I read it first issue right out of the starting gate because of my love for this character and James Robinson's Starman world. Did you find like you had a lot of questions, or was this a series that gave you what you needed to know as you went along? Because I'm under the assumption from the way it's being delivered that I didn't need to reread anything in order to enjoy this. I was able to pick up issue 1, but I've read all that stuff before, so it's not a fair comparison. How was it for you to be reading those issues when you did, the stockpiled issues that you did? Did you find this to be accessible?
Oh, big time. This is a very smooth read through. It was I never felt like I was like, what the heck's going on here? They laid it out wonderfully, either directly telling you or with some artwork stuff, and just kind of, there's no gaps for me. Now, there's probably big story gaps that I don't understand, and there could be some Easter eggs that you're going to see that I'm not going to see, but picking this up, reading it, was never lost, never confused. I had a good understanding of who the Shade is. As of right now, I kind of understand. I see why some people are thinking that he's a villain. Others, see him as somebody different. They see the change in him. They see the evolution of him as a person. And I like seeing just who he is. And I'm kind of glad I didn't have a lot of baggage going into this, because I'm seeing this person. This is my Shade. This is the guy I know. Now, it's made me really want to pull out the other stuff and read it. So I do want to read the previous stuff and get a grasp of who he was before this. But I really have an understanding of who this guy is right here and now.
Well, in this series how they mentioned the Ludlows as being a potential set of suspects hunting him down. And he talked about how the Ludlows, the last of the Ludlow line has died out and that type of thing. The Ludlows were the main adversary in the last miniseries.
Oh, okay.
So there's nothing there that you need because, as he told everybody, that chapter's closed. And that chapter was closed. That's something that you've seen in previous storytelling with him. The stuff that's in the Starman Omnibus is for the Shade fans. People are like reading this and kind of going, okay, what'll I find in there with the Shade? A lot of the things you're saying, Jim, where some people are saying that this character is a hero. Some people are saying this character is a villain. You're going to see that same kind of sense. When he first appears on the scene in Starman, he first appears, and the assumption is that he's coming in as a villain.
Yeah.
And this reality that he loved Opal and started to build these relationships there, and that he's this interesting gray area. And this series, I think, is showing that transition from who is he really? As fans, I think anybody who read Starman would tell you that the Shade became a hero, or at least we got to understand him a little bit more, that there is goodness in him in that series. But I think if you have read the Shade outside of that, you think of the Shade as a villain. And it seems like the direction this is going in is to really give you an explanation of not only where he's at now, but where he is going from here. And I love that there's this sense of either A or B. The Shade's either going to be a hero or a villain after that, or, he's going to resolve one or the other. And I love that in this particular issue, we get this sense of, hey, if you head down, if you don't beat this, if you don't hold on to that light inside you, it could be a catastrophe, not only for you, but for those you love. Real sense of this being really important, this destruction of him is more than just a destruction of him as a being. It's a destruction of his morality, everything that we've seen develop from him over time. I really like that. I mean, there's something fun, like, this is an interesting guy. I really think this is another example of, I hope after this 12-issue miniseries, that we'll see James Robinson tackle this character more and more along the way. Maybe this will lead to another 12-issue miniseries or something like that. I'd love to see regular appearances from the Shade, because with his rich history, I mean, there's this sequence here where he's in 1874 on this boat. This is where he hasn't learned how to step through the shadows to get from place to place, so he still has to travel by conventional means, but he is the Shade here. Mm-hmm. I really like that when you see these sequences, you get this sense of, this guy's been around so long that there's so much of his life we as the readers don't know about. There's really just an endless amount of potential to tell stories of things that we don't know. Past enemies, past foes, past loves, past family members. We see one developed in this story. That, I'm like, what? What's going on? Caldecott? What's going on there? I love that you don't know who's on the right, who's on the wrong. Obviously, I'm guessing there's more Caldecotts than the one that's revealed in this issue. Or is there? I don't know. I'm making assumptions there. But I love that these are things that I'm caring about and thinking about. We're not even, I think, really going to find out next issue. Well, maybe 1944. I think next issue is The Times Past 1944. Mm-hmm. Is what they said. So I'm guessing maybe we're going to go back in time and see how that family
first met and that whole meeting.
Because that's his grandson, right?
Yes.
So how did that happen?
Well, you think about it with his bloodline, and I like the fact in the previous issues they're talking about people were trying to find the last of his human blood, the last of his blood that's out there that hadn't become the Shade entity, the darkness, or whatever it turns into now. And that's where this whole thing began, because they're laying down the groundwork for this. And when I read that, I'm thinking, okay, there's probably some mystic properties with it. And I was thinking immortality, regeneration. I wasn't thinking bloodline family trying to use it to heal them, or try to use it to fix them. So when I got to that last page, I was like, oh, that's cool. That this whole thing has all been about just him and his family, and that's where this is kind of. I don't want to say the villains of the story, but maybe that's going to be where it's going to, where his challenge is going to come from. And I like that. I was like, okay, this is kind of neat. This is an interesting exploration of this guy.
So being a part of his bloodline, are you taking it then that this person is trying to recreate what happened to the Shade so he can live? So he can have the immortality? Is that what Darnell Caldecott, do you think, is that John Cross?
That's what I was thinking. That was, when they first introduced the concept of the blood, that's the first thought that popped in my head. Then when I see the grandson in the really state of broken downness that he is, I'm like, okay, I can see now he's at the end of his life. He wants the immortality, or he wants to be healed. He doesn't want to die, and we all get to that point where in life we're like, hey, I'm not ready to go yet. Well, he's got somebody in his family bloodline that actually has defeated death. He's stepped out. He's kind of circumvented it, and he's found a loophole in the rules. So I'm thinking he wants that same, that same issue, and there's a price for it because even Shade makes a comment about how he doesn't have a soul, and there is a price to be paid for that immortality, and I can't see him willingly put somebody else through this.
But he does have a soul, though.
Right.
So, I mean, it's the Shade. I see, that's one of the things that I really like about this, too. For as long as he lived, the Shade doesn't fully understand what's happened to him either. Like, he knows the things that he's discovered along the way through vast experience and all that. But that doesn't mean that you know everything. There's really no mentor for him to pull from. So he's kind of the sensei of his powers. You know what I mean? He's the guy.
Yeah.
He is the master. So he only knows what the master does, and if it's him, any of the blanks, any of the gray areas that he has not been able to fill in his lifetime will be things that are still left to be discovered. And I love this idea of this immortal character who's lived for so long, that there's still a mystery to him. And I also like that there's a sense of there's still vulnerability there. After all those years living and things like that, I think it's this sense of vulnerability, this sense of discovery, this sense of need to find your place. After everything he's lived through, where do I want my life to go now and things like that. I love that he's an immortal character that I don't like. Sometimes immortal characters are painted too perfect, if that makes sense. Like they've lived so long, they know everything and all that. I like with him, it's a different look at an immortal to me. And it's one of the things I've always found engaging about the Shade. It's a different take. This is a guy who's on a different path of discovery. He's made a life change. And with that life change, there's a newness to it. It's all stuff that we sure I saw this stuff in Starman, but this was towards the end of Starman. How we saw this gradual transition for him. And the relationship that we're seeing with him now is very new. So, I mean, I like that these are things that they're epilogue stuff to Starman, really, years later that you get to see this. And I love that this is launched into a mini-series now, and we're seeing the Shade in a whole new light. And the potential for this character to follow him is really great. And I love, like I said, that it's an accessible immortal. Because too often they're written like, you just can't fathom them. And I find that I can with this guy.
Now, here's something that I kind of thought with that whole sequence where he's talking about how he doesn't have a soul and he's being told, yes, you do. I kind of took it that what we're seeing now is the Shade's soul is coming back to him. There's some people say you're born with a soul. Others say you earn it through your actions and through your deeds, and that's your true soul. That's what you are. If you're this good person, then you have this good soul. If you're just this evil monster, then guess what? You don't have it. And I kind of read it. That's what's going on with him in his life, because he is starting that embrace the path. He is starting that journey where he could become, a person, and I'm not saying he'll stop being the Shade, but he will start being something else, and it's that actions that's the growth of his soul.
See, and I'm going to go the other route and say that I think a lot of times you'll see evil characters that'll sit there and say, I don't have a soul, and use that as an excuse for their actions. And I think, this guy all along is now saying, I didn't have a soul, and that's why I was the way I was, and that type of thing, when the truth of the matter was he had one all along. And just now he's going to have to deal with the fact that, okay, I have a soul,
yeah,
and I do have the ability to choose. And this really is going to be about, how do you deal with your life path? I think, he's opening up to new experiences. He's learning new things. He's learning how to go to new areas. Very similar. He has to go to new areas because of Darnell Caldecott. Caldecott's, besides, obviously, grandfather, searching that out, he's also been exploring all other kinds of magic. His guardian that we're going to talk about when we get to it, is proof that he's been searching different magical realms. And when Shade has to kind of suck it up and go to his old quote-unquote enemy of Diablo Blacksmith, and I love that. You got this guy, he was a villain. This is somebody Diablo Blacksmith. I love that Diablo Blacksmith is this guy who is a former hero, a former adventurer, former doing, good things, kind of a male version of Zatanna. And, I love that this guy now, he's kind of battle weary. He's like, okay, I've done this. I'm getting older. I'm at the twilight of my years. Now the Shade's coming to me. And it's a very, this conversation between them is very tentative at first. They're dancing around each other. Blacksmith's feeling him out. And through his own feeling out of the Shade, he's starting to realize this is not totally the guy I fought before. This is a different man. The years have changed both of us. And I'm at a point right now where, I've got to make a decision. Am I going to give this guy the info that he can use? Or do I tell him to, hit the bricks? And I really love that conversation had that kind of tete-a-tete all the way through it. It wasn't an instantaneous, oh, you're a good guy now. Come on, sit down. Let's have some, treats. I liked that had that feeling all the way through. It was very well written because even at the end, I still felt like they weren't ending that conversation as friends. There was a different understanding than they had walking into it. But neither at the end would call each other a friend. Now, I do believe that this will influence any other encounter that they might have in the future, if they have another one. But it would still be tentative, Yeah. And I like that. I really loved that feeling. It wasn't a clean ending. It was the way that it should be. There was something about that. And I love the whole concept of the dream time and that the Shade, again, this is a guy who's been immortal, lived, for so many years, but he still doesn't know everything. This Diablo's explored this. This is something he needs this guy's experiences in order to even attempt what he's going to do to... we didn't even know it was his grandson. I love that. I mean,
oh, yeah.
Shade knew what he was walking into and had to set himself up first. And if he didn't do this, and I loved that when he was talking to Caldecott, he was tuning him out. Which, who wouldn't?
I tell you, with dealing with the blacksmith, that for me, because you talk about a dance, and that was something that really rings true. And anytime we get a good magic story, some of the Zatanna stuff was really cool, some of the Justice League Dark stuff, you do get that kind of dealings between these magical characters where they're going to have some interactions. And it's not always just going to be a flat out bam, 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 fireballs back and forth. There's going to be a little bit of a dance. There's going to be some misdirection because part of the thing with magic is misdirection. And there's going to be a little bit here, a little bit there. And I was loving seeing how that was playing out because the whole time he's dealing with that, I was thinking in the back of my head, is this guy going to give Shade some bad information just to make Shade's life even worse? Or, is he going to be open and upfront with him? Is there going to be some misdirection going that way? And I really digged how that played out. Partially the fact that Shade didn't completely, I don't want to say didn't understand him, but there was some, stuff that maybe he could have looked at differently or dealt with differently, especially when he goes to start facing this lizard god and he does the initial opening, bam, opening fight sequence instead of trying to reason with him.
I actually want to correct myself from something. You talked about Justice League Dark and magic stories and stuff like that. On the forum, a couple of the guys, and they were right to do this, they called me out on, I called Constantine like a true hero, and I don't remember saying that. I'm not saying that they're wrong. It was one of those things where I was kind of laying out Justice League Dark and, some of the ambiguous characters and stuff like that. And I guess Constantine, it's funny, it's an appropriate time to bring up Constantine when we're talking about the Shade. Because... I've read a lot of stories with Constantine where he winds up being the guy who, when you've got this big earth-shattering event, where it's going to be the end of everything, he will make bargains to try and save people, and he'll face the darkness in a way where, in many ways, he's got to sell his soul in order to do that. The Shade's been one of those guys, too, where, like in Starman, there are things that Jack Knight couldn't do that the Shade could do, because he's not afraid to cross that line, to get dirty. And, Constantine, is he a tried and true hero? No. When you're reading his solo series, I guess he's the main character, the hero that you're following, and that's what I was getting at. Like in the Milligan run, I'm really into the character. So I think for me, he's a guy that I rally behind, even though there's a lot of times where I probably shouldn't, which is a lot of what they were trying to say on the forum, and I agree with them. But, it's interesting to talk about him when you talk about the Shade. They're not cookie cutter. They're not the same kind of character. But both of them are characters that will get a little dirty when they need to be. And I like that with the Shade. I honestly will say, out of the two of them right now, thinking back to the conversation the guys mentioned on the forum, I do think the Shade's a little more heroic now than Constantine, going off of the discussion point that we had there. Where this is a guy who really is trying to
walk the path.
Yeah.
He's right now trying to, be the hero. He's trying to be the good guy. And it's got me curious, how far will he be able to go? Will he be able to take those final steps? Because this opening sequence, he's fighting somebody called a lizard god. Now, when you get the title of Lizard God, you got to know there's going to be some power levels. And I love the fact that we kind of jump in to the middle of the fight sequence. And we already see Shades kind of get rocked a little bit, and the Lizard God is just coming on him, hitting him hard and hitting him fast. And I love seeing the fact that Shades scrambling and he's, bobbing and weaving, and it's, it's not just a cut forward, oh, okay, I've got the power to stop, because this is a massively monstrous, powerful being that he's up against. And it was something that it kind of had me chuckling, because you think about Diablo Blacksmith when he's sitting there talking to him, telling him, yeah, if you listen to the story, his affinity to flames and knives, yeah, that probably won't be too good for you. And just the kind of, the casualness, the little sarcasm, little humor in those sentencings, going right into the fact that he is getting rocked by the fire and the knives, I kind of had me chuckling. Really, I was like, this is good.
I love the Cully Hamner artwork, especially in that fight sequence. I loved when you saw the Shade splitting himself, like using his Shade power to teleport between the flame. He's on one side, then he's on the other side, really doing the whole trick where you slice yourself in half.
Yeah.
Really just a well-done thing. But I love when you take a character who seems to be all-powerful, like the Shade. He's this all-powerful character of darkness. He can do all this. I love when they show us that, that's not exactly the truth. There is some vulnerability there, especially when you're against characters like that. And the Shade actually has to tap into areas that he's never been before, like that dreaming. He had to remember things that Diablo told him in their meetings. And that darkness, the swan that he collected, it shows that he's able to tap into a beauty that is inside him. And I think that's the part where we were finding, yes, he does have a soul. The question is his soul strong enough to overcome the darkness? And I think we've seen that. Does he know that? Is he strong enough to see that? I find him infinitely interesting because of that. Because I think he is one of those. He reminds me a lot of, like in TV shows like Buffy and stuff like that. Characters like Spike and Angel. Why do we like them so much? Because they're a lot like the Shade. And I don't want to make it seem like either of those characters. Angel and Spike are just as different as the Shade is from them. They're very unique characters and each have their own validity. But they're characters that you can't help but want to see not lose that edge, because the Shade won't lose that edge, and I think that's what's really important. But yet they skirt that line of, yeah, I see him as a hero, and you want him to succeed. And their vulnerabilities, their past mistakes and all that are just as interesting as what they're doing in the present day.
See, I think Spike is a great comparison, for Shade. Spike more than Angel for me, because, I always looked at, Spike got his soul. He was a vampire, soulless monster, soulless beast. He got his soul through the various trials that he had to go through, and so here he is, this vampire with a soul. And he was going through, seeing him with Buffy and how he started having feelings for Buffy, how he started just his personality, he just started changing and being, this creature that wasn't, what he wasn't the normal vampire. He wasn't human. He was his own entity, his own existence. And I kind of see that with Shade as well, because there is this path where he is starting to walk in the light. He is starting to do the right thing. And I like the fact that, it actually, just thinking about that is kind of the part of the reason I am really behind this guy, because I was always a Spike fan. I always liked the character. I always liked where they went with him and what they did with him. So I can kind of see that connection.
One of the things I like that I think is an important distinction from him with both of them is the fact that these were characters who, Angel and Spike were characters who changed because they got their souls. The Shade is somebody who he can't say, and I don't want to see him say this. I don't want the excuse to be, now all of a sudden I've magically got a soul, I'm a good guy now. I like the idea that, in my mind, he's had his soul all along. He's just discovering that. There is no point where we're finding the Shade was magically given a soul again. If you look back in the Starman series, his turn came from his love from Opal. And it's not a turn per se, as much as this was a guy who was protecting his home. He's made friends along the way, and maybe he's seeing the world differently because of it. This life path veering that the creature's talking about is something that happened gradually with him. This is a choice versus it being explained away by that. I love very much what Joss Whedon did with both Angel and Spike, and I would not want to see that reenacted here, in a sense, that way. I like the idea this guy's had a soul along. He can't explain that away. He did all these things in the past. When he's meeting with Diablo Blacksmith, he's not sitting there saying, well, that was when I didn't have a soul. He's saying, I had that battle with him. We did not end on such good terms. And, it's no excuses, no blaming it away on anything. He's got to face that confrontation with Diablo Blacksmith coming from the standpoint of, I did that. I was there. That was me. It's not, I'm not from the outside looking in. I was at those events. I find that neat too. Just as interesting as Angel and Spike are. And I agree with the comparisons, how you're like engaged by those. I like those characters because they were so unique when I was watching them on television that I find this guy just as unique and refreshing because I can connect with them, but then there's something different as well. And it's neat. It's real interesting because evil you are, good you are too. These are both part of him. And when he goes in, this nerves going up the stairs. I'm like, why is he so nervous? That was a long time ago. What happened so long ago? We don't know. What a great mystery being developed here. I urge people, if you're digging this miniseries, first of all, if you haven't read this miniseries, pick it up right away. I'm thrilled, Jim, that you mentioned that it was accessible because I make those assumptions a lot of times, but unless you're talking to someone like you who is reading this for the first time and doesn't really have the background with the character, you don't know, and I'm thrilled that you can actually say that because I'm hoping maybe people listening are like, well, I don't have any background with the Shade, so I avoided this. Would you recommend, would this be something you would recommend to people? And who would you recommend it to?
Well, I definitely would recommend it to people. And I think, that's a question. It's funny because we keep throwing out the Buffy, the Angel Spike. I definitely think if somebody was into that style of storytelling, was into that genre, they'd probably, you would get very similar vibe and get some, comfort out of this character. He's not your bright shining dun-da-da hero. He does walk the line of good, evil, light, dark. There is a little bit of, dirtiness in him. So if that's the kind of story that I definitely would if you're into that style of story, this is one I definitely would recommend picking up just because it has. It's not clean cut. It's not straightforward, but it's not confusing. It's not crowded. It's not anything that where you're not thinking, okay, who the good guy is, who the main character is, but he's not going to deal with the problems the way Superman would or the way Batman would. He is his own character. He's his own entity, and you get a great sense of who he is very quickly. by this third issue, I'm very comfortable with who the Shade is and who he is and where it's going to go. So it's, this is something that, this is one of those well-crafted tales that really leads you through the path, keeps you entertained the entire time. They're letting you know about the past, present, and future all at the same time.
I'll recommend this book. If you're reading any of these titles, I would really suggest you pick this up because I think this is in your wheelhouse. DC's current Wonder Woman series, if you're reading that, I think this is a book that you would enjoy because I think the edge that's in that book you're going to find here. Batman by Scott Snyder, American Vampire by Scott Snyder. If you're reading any of those books, you would dig this book. I think it's right in that wheelhouse. Anybody reading things like Sweet Tooth or Animal Man should be picking up this book. It's in that Justice League Dark, any of the supernatural titles like I, Vampire, those type of things, Swamp Thing, you should be picking up this title. I think this is in that wheelhouse. You'd be very comfortable picking up the Shade. And those are just some recommendations right now. But if you're reading any of those titles, this is something that I think you'd find a lot of the edge. And then obviously Dark Horse's, Buffy series, either that or the Angel and Faith series, if you're digging that. This is in that category. It's different, it's unique, it's not, a cookie cutter to any of those titles, but I'm saying that this is, if you're into that style, I think this book you'll be very comfortable with reading if you haven't ever picked up the Shade before. So it's a good recommendation, I think, for those people. I don't know if you agree with me. I think those are just some titles.
No, those are, I'm 100% backing. That's a good line. That's a good line of thought and good style comparison.
Because, this is another one very similar to, it's funny to talk about these two back-to-back, the Ray and this. They're two books that couldn't be more different. But my passion for, please check these titles out is equal. I'm a huge fan of Starman when James Robinson was writing it. But the Shade miniseries that he did is one of the finest miniseries I've ever read. And this, to me, it's such a welcome to see him come back to this and be delivering such a great miniseries once again. It's great, and I do say if you're digging this now and you're already reading it, do go back and read the previous Shade miniseries. It's great. You can either pick it up in the omnibus or actually pick up the miniseries itself and the issues or however you want to go about it. But well worth reading if you like this. You don't have to enjoy this, but cool stuff happened with the Ludlows.
Amen.
Now I can get out of here.
Our next review is going to be of Mr. Terrific number 4. Eric Wallace is the writer. Gianluca Gugliotta is the artist. Wayne Faucher inker. Mike Atea colorist. Dave Sharp letterer. J.G. Jones cover. Hi-Fi cover color. Joey Cavalieri is the editor, and Kate Stewart, associate editor. And apologies for any name butchery that happened there. This is a book, it's interesting, Jim. I'm glad we waited till issue 4 to talk about it. And I like the way we've been doing this, where we've been kind of waiting till we had something we really wanted to say about a title. I'm a huge Mr. Terrific fan. Loved him from JSA. What's interesting with this series is we're taking a Mr. Terrific now that has not had the JSA there as a role model. Before his background came from, he was a fan of the original Mr. Terrific, he was a fan of the legacy heroes of the JSA, and he pulled from that as far as helping to define who he is. They've taken a lot of his origin and his background, what happened to him, and brought that into his book, but now we've got a character who's got to develop outside of having that team structure, outside of having those role models. And I'm finding that I'm really liking the journey of getting to know Mr. Terrific in this environment. I'm finding the same guy there, but it's been a gradual process of finding him. And that's not a knock. It's interesting to see this guy develop this way. I do think what I've found that's interesting about this book is that the creative team has had to make changes to him in order to account for the fact that this world is very different that he's a part of now. But I am finding him now, especially in this issue, when we start seeing him exploring this different sort of universe that he's discovered as a way to travel from place to place. How are you enjoying Mr. Terrific? Are you finding, did you find an immediate connection with this guy and the guy that was in JSA? Did you find that you had to get to know him gradually? What has been your experience?
This has definitely been a gradual process for me. And when it first hit the ground, I was like, oh, okay. I'd really started getting behind him in the previous runs. I was like, okay, I like this guy. I like who he is and what he's about. And the initial exposure, I was like, I see parts of the guy I like, but I see some stuff that I don't know about, and it was kind of a weird meshing. And this was an issue that really had some cool, what I would consider to be a classic Mr. Terrific moments, where you see him looking at this with the scientist's mind, and he kind of even catches himself and chastises himself because he was looking beyond. He wasn't looking at the the initial details. He was thinking beyond that, thinking about the science ramifications. He was the curiosity of the scientist got him in trouble, and he should have seen the trap and the ambush coming. And I like the fact that he's able to accept his own little personal character weaknesses, and then later on he uses his skills to get out of this. This is a really cool character definition of him, that he is this great guy that I really enjoyed last time. I'm still seeing that same guy here. I'm still seeing that same, Mr. Terrific that I liked before. So it's definitely something that as the series is going on, I'm getting more and more behind him. This issue had some really cool hoorah moments for me that I was really like, yes, that's what I wanted to see. And this is, again, I love the build. I'm digging where this is going, and I am curious to see what's going to happen. Because the last couple issues they had Karen Starr in this, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen further on with her and him in this universe. With her, when they introduce the JSA, what's going to happen there? I want to see where this guy's going to go, what he's going to do.
The JSA isn't going to be in this universe, I don't think, though.
Well, when I say this universe, I mean the new 52. I want to see if there's going to be a Michael Holt over there, or if it's going to be the classic Mr. Terrific, or what are we going to get that way?
Yeah, I think there's options for both. And I think what we're going to see is very similar. We've got a Karen Starr here. That's not Power Girl, as far as I know. I'm guessing that's not going to be Power Girl. That's going to just be Karen Starr, and where we're getting a Karen Starr who isn't from Krypton?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's true. All bets are off. We don't know.
We still don't know who she is, we know who she is, but we don't know. There could very easily be some, secrets we don't know.
I like the love triangle. Well, I don't know if it's so much a love triangle. We've got that girl who's running his company right now, who's got a loyalty to him and an interest in him. But you got a guy here who's got scars. He lost his family, and that's still something he's suffering through. Can we talk about his son before we jump into this issue?
Oh, sure.
Now, what do you think is going on there? Because I find that really a cool thread in this series. I've been really engaged. Is his son still alive? Is it because of some of the scientific experiments and somehow his son got pulled into somewhere? How is it that his son is there? Is this something that he did and we haven't seen him do it yet to bring his son back? What's going on there?
See, I take it that his son is dead. Yeah, his son is gone, and this is just either something he's pulled in to create like a pseudo type of non-actual entity, or just a crazy accident that he doesn't understand yet, we don't understand yet, we don't know exactly what the deal is. But I'm taking it it's not actually the real son.
See, and I don't know, because he totally is not, in that sequence, he's totally not, he's taken off guard by the fact that kid makes the appearance. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I don't know that's, I'm wondering if, in fact, that on some level, in some way, it might be his son pulled back from an alternate reality, some different universe, some weird science experiment or something. It might really be his kid. Because he seems to believe it's really his kid.
Yeah, I think it's just him wanting to believe that. I don't think it actually is his kid.
See, I don't know. I think I think there's a possibility it is. I don't know. I find the whole thing engaging. And here's the thing. I don't know if you're right or I'm right. I don't know that it really matters right now. I think that there's nothing in the story to indicate either way. It's an interesting situation here. Because
it's funny because as I say what I'm saying, mm-hmm. if it turns out I'm wrong, I'll be cool. I'll be happy with wherever this goes and how it plays out, because it's the journey that it's not for me. It's not the outcome. It's the journey that gets there. The journey to get there that I'm really enjoying about this character, because this is, again, in a way, this is a complete relaunch for me, because all the stuff that made Mr. Terrific he doesn't have that same support structure that he had before.
Right.
This is a completely different character. Yes, it's the same guy, and I'm seeing some of those same stuff that I always thought was great about him, but his journey to get here was different. And I think it's taken a couple issues for me really to start to get the groove of this guy, who he is. And it's a really cool ride so far, and it's something that I want to see I want to see where this goes further, and I want to get, I think I'll get a stronger feeling and a closer connection to him.
I'm glad we waited to talk about this book. It wasn't something we consciously did. We've just kind of been gradually picking books along the way. But I think there's a reason why we waited till issue 4 to start talking about Mr. Terrific. I agree with you. This is a full relaunch. I think I kept looking for Mr. Terrific, for the JSA Mr. Terrific in there, and I'm finding elements of him in here, but I'm finding that I like this guy, and it's 4 issues in. I think it really took this issue for me to feel that way, because I think what was happening with issue 1, 2, and 3, I enjoyed the series. I liked him, and stuff like the Sun and his history and Karen Starr and what's going on with his company. All that background stuff was really essential to me to find out, who am I with? Am I on his side? Do I like him? Do I want to keep following this book? I love that there was ramifications with what he was doing when he was being taken over by that brainwave. Mm-hmm. Was it brainwave?
Yes.
That brain character, when that guy took him over, I'm glad that I found Brainstorm. I'm sorry, it wasn't Brainwave. Brainwave's a different character. That wasn't washing with me. It's Brainstorm. When that Brainstorm took him over, I liked that there were ramifications, and I liked that his behavior recently and not being around all the time has brought him into question by board of directors and things like that for his company, where they're taking this girl who has an interest in him and saying, hey, he's never going to be interested in you. Why is there loyalty to him? This is your chance now for you to take your spot. What is she going to do? From what I know of her already, one of the things that I really like about her is I feel like she will side with him. But what happens when, you're turned down by the person that you're interested in? At what point in time do you continue taking that and not start to look out for yourself and your own bottom line and your own best interest? I don't know. It's an interesting backstory that's going on. I like that there's more than one thing to follow in this. I think it's pretty essential, because a lot of the titles that I'm enjoying, it really is based on not just the main character, but the things that are going on in the background, the supporting cast, their world being fleshed out. He's got a world that's being fleshed out here that I'm starting to really like following. But I do think one of the things about this series that has been holding it back at first has been me getting used to the fact and wrapping my head around the concept that this is not the same Michael Holt. And I think I've been latching too much on to looking for the JSA guy. I will say this. Even though this is a new guy, it's okay to give him the coat. Because I love that leather coat.
See, I like the new style. I like the new look.
Without the coat? I'm
not knocking the coat, but I like just how this has a little bit more sleek tech look to him. It kind of fits in. It fits in this universe a little bit better than the jacket did.
No, wait, hang on. Let me point of clarification. I like the current suit, so I don't want to say, I'm not saying the current suit should go, but he's going to get cold sometime. Give him the coat. I like the coat look. Regardless of it, though, I'm with you, actually. I'm not knocking this costume, because I do like this costume. Like, okay, somewhere in the ninth dimension, let's go to this book, this issue right now. I loved the whole setup with the Krill, how the Krill were playing him, because they were making it seem like, these weren't really the Krill. They were victims of the Krill, who were the blue dudes.
Yeah.
When those really aren't the Krill. The Krill were the ones he was dealing with all along. I loved the swerve where, he's this hero who's floating around in his T-spears, which I think is a very cool visual look. Like especially in that double-page spread where you see the exposed and you see him standing there looking at the big ship coming in. And you see him standing on the 2 spears with the other one beside him. I love that visual. There's something cool about him. He can't fly. He has to rely on his technology to get from place to place when he's traveling between these worlds. I love that. I think it's just in this weird universe that he's discovered. I like that the Krill they don't instantly know about him.
Yeah.
So they would come in as these little meek characters. There was an old Doctor Who story featuring this cute little furry character called Meep, I think it was called. It was this little ball of fur that looked like this little cute little plush animal. It turned out that this was like this alien dominator destroyer thing. It was like, it was like what would happen if, a Care Bear turned on you or something. These characters were just like that. They were the ones that were the small little, because they look like tiny, defenseless creatures. But then it turns out that they are these dominators that collect these people. And they were just trying to do fact-finding with him. And he was pulled in by that, and who wouldn't be? Their size and their stature would make you think otherwise. I also love the tiny detail that the only reason why he understands them is because of the materials that they're wearing, the belts. And that was something that he has to think through. And it's one of the things that I really enjoy about exploring his inner dialogue in this issue. I really think issue 4 is the issue where I've really finally connected with him, and I really like the character. And I'm really glad I stuck with this book, because I needed that issue where it was just kind of like, okay, now it's finally all come together and clicked. This book was never on the chopping block, but it was finally, I think by issue 4, it's been like all the pieces parts have come together, and I feel like I'm really with a character now that I can follow, I can rally behind. I dig Mr. Terrific. And I've gotten past my whole, okay, it's not my old Michael Holt from the past. I like this Michael Holt, and that's something I needed. I needed to hit that clicking point, and I've gotten past all that now. Especially when you've got this guy reasoning out, why can't I understand all these other aliens, but I can't understand these guys? And that comes into play later. Great development in an issue. I love that these were tiny little things where you're saying this guy's got all this intelligence. You better start playing it off strategically in the issue. They do a really good job of that in this book. I really like how his mind is something that's really important.
Oh, yeah. Good strategery is definitely needed for him. And I'm loving seeing just how it's playing out and just,
Wait, hold on. Michael Holt's shaking his head off of your strategery.
Come on. Strategery is an awesome word. I love that word.
Yeah, Michael Holt's shaking his head too.
But it was neat because the funny thing is when we first saw these little guys, I originally really thought, okay, this is a setup. This is an ambush. This is a trick.
Wow.
And I like the fact that Michael chastises himself, and we kind of see why he missed what could have been a very obvious, yes, this is a trick. Yes, you got to watch where you step, because he was so into where the science was, seeing these ships, trying to figure out and understand, wow, I wonder if, what kind of level of technology do you need to have something like this? And I thought that was a cool just understanding and admittance by him. A lot of times when you get a hero who makes a mistake, they're not going to own up to it. They're not going to man up to it. Well, part of the fact that Michael is so intelligent is he can admit when he makes a mistake, and he can learn from the past. And then you see him studying his surroundings, getting an understanding of where he is, what's going on. I loved seeing just the way his mind works. If you're dealing with the third smartest man in the world, you need to know that he is actually that intelligent, and not just because he can build something out of a paper clip and some, duct tape. That's a MacGyver thing. This guy needs to have the logic process. You need to hear his inner dialogue. You need to see why he's thinking the way he's thinking. And I love that just how it's playing out, and especially this issue, because he had that whole dialogue problem. He's trying to explain to that big alien that's trying to hack him in half, and he's trying to use physical gestures. He's trying to explain, hey, I can get us out of here. Quit trying to kill me, and I'll get us free. I love that.
See, you're skipping over some really important parts that I really want to talk about, because one of the things that I dig about this guy, the reason why was he off his game, why didn't he catch this? This is a guy, look at what emotionally he's gone through in the previous issues. He was savagely fighting that guy to the point where a kid who had idolized him and looked up to him, wanted to be him, has now said, this is not the kind of hero I want to follow. That struck him.
Yeah.
That moment where he was face to face with that kid really struck him. And he's looking at it and saying, okay, I'm not thinking the way I should be. And I think that's where I'm starting to connect with this guy now. I'm like, there's more to him than what we've seen in those previous issues. I'm enjoying that. I'm like, we're going to see this guy evolve more and more into the Mr. Terrific that I know and love, but it's part of following that journey, seeing him get to that point. This is a Michael Holt who hasn't had those role models, but he's still Michael Holt. I think that's something I needed to connect with during this. Yes, I'm seeing him as a new Michael Holt. Yes, I'm seeing him as a slightly different Michael Holt, but he's still Michael Holt at the core. And that's something I need that when you're going to revamp a character. It's a little different than, like we talked about the Ray, this issue. Ray from the ground up is a brand new character. So I'm not comparing him to previous Rays or anything like that. I'm comparing him on his own merits to being, is he a valid and vibrant new character? Yes, he is. With this guy, it's taken me a few issues for me to get past my understanding of Michael Holt and remembering this guy hasn't had the benefit of that background and seeing that Michael Holt's still in there. This is the issue that made me see Michael Holt still in there. When he's questioning himself, who's the villain now, Michael? Those type of moments with him are critical for me as a reader who has had and you and I know have a different background with Michael Holt. I read a ton of Michael Holt before. I've read every appearance of Michael Holt before. I have. So I got a rich history with him. I had trouble letting it go to the point where I'm sitting there screaming for the jacket.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between the two of us. You're ready to let that go with no problem, and that's cool. I totally get the difference. I'm finding a guy that I really like here for a lot of the reasons that you're saying. And I love the bits when it comes to negotiating with these alien creatures. Again, he's got to reason that out. These are people from different alien races, and instead of just being generic alien creatures, they're all going to react differently to what they're seeing from him. You got that spiked creature where Michael's like, okay, I don't have my T-spears. Only tech I've got with me is my mask. So we've got to see this guy using his martial arts skills, using the fighting skills that he's got. I like that. This is not a one-trick pony. It's not just about the brains. It's about a guy who's honed himself physically, which there is an intelligence to. I think the martial arts are in a very intelligent, disciplined skill set. I've never had the opportunity to go through and do martial arts, but I've always loved watching movies and reading books involving martial arts. Even as a kid, I remember in elementary school, I remember reading martial art books that, trained you how to do martial arts. I'm not saying that I learned how to do anything from them, but I loved that one of the things that are cool about martial arts is the discipline aspect of them. So a guy like Michael Holt would be disciplined enough to do something like that. And you see him using those skills and saying, wait a minute, got to stop here. I've got to start being the guy that I haven't been lately. Let me stop. Let me not use the brute force. Let me try to get these these aliens to see me. And I love that it's the big lumpy alien that you would automatically assume visually is the dumb one.
Yeah.
Who winds up being the more intelligent out of all the aliens. The more critical out of all the aliens. I love a book that reminds us that you can't judge a book by its cover. You can't judge an alien by its purple grape ape nature. Yep. You know what I mean? He looks like a big grape ape Hulk looking thing. Yep. And that's not true. Inside him, this is an intelligent creature. This is a leader of all these other aliens. They naturally follow and respect him, not just because of his brute force, but because of the fact of when he doesn't use it. So this guy helps Holt. And I love that immediately, the second that he has the opportunity, Michael Holt's like, okay, we've got to break down the communication barrier. And who am I going to have to talk to first? Grape Ape. Great. Just a great sequence of events. Erdron.
Yeah.
Cool character.
Oh, yeah. It was funny because the one little part that did have me chuckling, really, right at the beginning of the fight, was just his reference to how, okay, all prisons are alike. You got to establish that, you can throw down. You don't want to be the weak one. You don't want to be perceived as, easy prey because you will become that. And given his smaller stature over everything, he would become an easy mark. And I love the fact that they had that, but just that opening sequence when he's looking at his fellow inmates and he does the Klaatu Barata Nikto. I was like, yes!
Yeah, it's one of the. I actually like the whole angry black man with an alien posse bit too.
Oh God, that you know what? That was one of the cheer moments where I actually cheered out loud. And again, it's great, cool attitude, confidence, presence, and it was just hoorah! That right there was Mr. Terrific. And I was like, yes, that's the cool guy. That's the guy who's coming out fighting, who's figuring out, he doesn't have all his stuff at exposure, but he has his greatest weapon, and that's his mind. And I loved seeing that play out where he's using both just his intelligence, his able to, improvise, adapt, overcome, his physical presence, but also just there is that, ooh, that is Mr. Terrific, and I was glad to see that.
That what?
That ooh.
Feels like something you stepped in. Jim's wiping that off his shoe while we continue talking about Mr. Terrific. But one of the things that I really like about him, I love the whole mask bit and everything like that worked out. I love that he's a brainy character, though, who we see a personality to. We see a likability to. Just because you're smart doesn't mean that you have to be, you can't be down to earth. And I like that kind of message, too, because I think it's great to have a role model character where they are real brainy and smart, but yet they're engaging. There's personality. You can see why people would like that person. I don't know. It's something that I found interesting about the book. This was my favorite issue of Mr. Terrific so far, issue number 4. This was the one that clicked for me. And I will say this, I think issue number 4 is a very accessible issue. So if you haven't been reading this series, don't hesitate to pick up issue number 4 and see if this is the right book for you. This one, for me, had a lot of action, had a lot of what I think Mr. Terrific should be. And I was really glad for this issue. I don't know for you, Jim, have you been feeling the same about this series all along? Or has this been one where, gradually there came a point where you hit? Where was your connection with Mr. Terrific?
Yeah, you and I are very, very similar on this one. I was enjoying. It was a good read before this. The first 3 issues that were good reads. It was a good book, but it really wasn't until this one that I really started getting passionate about the character.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Let me ask you a question in general. How long do you give a book? Because for me, this is one of those books where if you'd asked me with issue 1, 2, and 3. Are you going to keep reading Mr. Terrific? I would have said, I'm really enjoying the read so far. I'm not passionate about the character yet. It would be one of those characters, like budget-wise, if I had to chop it down. With 1, 2, and 3, I probably would have had this book on the chopping block as being one I'd be sad to see go because it's been a good read, but I wasn't passionate about the character. Now with issue 4, I'm in a very different place. And I'm glad that I stuck with it because I'm passionate about the character now. How long do you give a book?
I give one story arc to decide if it's going to on the chopping block or not. One story arc with it on the block to decide if I definitely want to let it go. And then if after that, after the chopping block story arc, I'm still not 100% yes, get rid of it. I'll give it maybe a second story arc, and then I'll make the final call. So for me, a book will last easily 3 story arcs before I make a final call, because that really will give me a groove of what the character and what they're doing. So with this one, after the first story arc, I wouldn't say it was on the chopping block, but it was right above the block. I enjoyed the story. I was like, oh, okay, it was a good story, but there wasn't any passion behind it. If I had a financial emergency or a situation where I was like, things are getting bad, it could have been put on the block, but I wasn't at that place with it. Now, definitely after this issue, it's completely off of contention. There's no way I'm dropping this book right now, because this is a really great character and a really great title.
Amen. It was in that financial category. That's the best way to put it for me. Same thing for me. It's a book that I was enjoying, I was glad to follow, but I wasn't passionate about until this issue. Now this is one that, if financially I had to make cuts, I would have a real problem cutting Mr. Terrific. So it's funny how I needed, I would say easily, on the financial end, 5, 6 issues are, that point where I'm I got to make a financial cut, and I'm 6 issues in, I'm still not finding the passion point. I'm going to be sad to let it go because it's been a good read, but that would be, if I'm not at the passionate point, I would let it go. And this isn't just for Mr. Terrific, this is in general, what my measuring stick is. Because I think that's interesting. What are people's measuring sticks? That's kind of what mine is. There's a lot of books that I'm reading in general, across comics, that I'm finding to be good reads. They're well produced. but I don't have the passion for. 5, 6 issues in, that's where I start making decisions. Does this become one that goes to a trade? Do I trade this off for I'm enjoying Dark Horse's Star Wars stuff right now. Am I trading that book off to make sure that I can finance that type of stuff right now? Those are kind of the considerations. Terrific now is completely off that block. I'm with you.
Oh, big time.
This issue was super cool. And it's funny how you just need that one clicking issue that's just really well done. And I'm glad that we waited to talk about this book till issue number 4. It wasn't conscious. It just kind of organically wound up this way. And this is a jump-on issue to me. It's funny you start saying the series just got started, so I want to be a jump-on issue. But this is one, if I was going to give somebody an issue of Mr. Terrific and say, this is the book, I would start them on issue 4 first. I would give them issue 4 first and say, if you like this, read 1, 2, and 3 to see how he got here. But this would be my first issue to give for Mr. Terrific. What about you?
Oh, yeah. Agree. It's funny because those beginning issues you really do need them to see where he gets to this point. Mm-hmm. But this is definitely I'd hand them this one first just so they would get an idea of what Mr. Terrific is, what this character can do, and this was kind of a really cool point of the character so far.
I guess what I'm saying is my recommendation would be if anybody jumped off Mr. Terrific, because we've had phone calls coming in recently with people saying we dropped this book or I dropped that book because I just couldn't get behind it. I would say if you dropped off Mr. Terrific after maybe a couple issues or something like that, give it a try with issue 4, pick this one up and say, hey, maybe I shouldn't have dropped this book. This is really an issue where I would say I'm hoping this is a kind of a statement right now of where the book's heading, because I really liked this issue, and this is to me what I want to see from Mr. Terrific. I totally echo your sentiments that you need the stuff in issue 1, 2, and 3 to kind of fully understand his world and see the overall big picture. But I think this was the issue where I got to know him, that in a way that I haven't before, and I'm really glad that we talked about this one. Mr. Terrific.
Great molecules! They're programming the computers for a chain reaction to blow up that atomic pile!
And our next review will be Grifter number 4. The story by Nathan Edmondson, pencils by Scott Clark, inker Dave Betty, colorist Andrew Dalehouse, letterer Wes Abbott, assistant editor Katie Hubert, editor Bobby Chase, with the cover by Kafu, Gorder, and Dalehouse.
I think it's Dollhouse. I'm not sure, though. This has been one of those interesting books, Grifter. I got to say, with issue number 2 was really the issue for me that kind of started getting me going on Grifter. What is your history with Grifter as a character? Because I read, when in Wildstorm, remember Team 7, I believe the book was called. Wildcats, obviously, because he was on there. And then I've read guest appearances from the character in different Wildstorm books. I haven't read lengthy long runs with Grifter. Most of the time it's been in Wildcats because I read runs by Robinson and Alan Moore of Wildcats that I really enjoyed. But he's an interesting character because there's been a long stretch now where I haven't read Grifter really, except for some of the Worldstorm stuff.
Yeah, I'm very limited on Grifter. And this was one of the titles that when they announced that they're bringing it in, and they said, I was like, really? I understand you want to pull some Wildstorm, but do we really got to have this in there? And I was thinking of other titles that they could have put instead of him, but so when it was first announced, I was like, because all I really remembered of the guy was he was really good with guns. He was one of those, shooters, really hardcore, good mercenary, good fighter. I couldn't remember any meta-type powers or anything above and beyond superhuman, above and beyond high training. And it just, I don't know, for some reason, he and I never clicked. And it wasn't ever I wasn't like, ooh, this guy's awesome. I wasn't passionate about Grifter. And
now, Jim, he said he liked you instantly.
Well, I know most people like me instantly. I'm a likable guy.
Just wanted to clarify that because you might not have connected with him, but he loved you right from the get-go. Although he said he wanted to put a rag over your face.
Well, that's a common thought amongst people. They want to throw a rag in my face, and they think I'm an alien. Got some alien blood in me or something. So he probably made an instant connection because he probably wanted to kill me.
Wait, in my case, he didn't even wait to say that he wanted to put a rag over my face. He put a burlap sack over my head. That's a whole different argument. But I don't know. This has been one of those characters, one of those books that, like, issue 1 I enjoyed. I liked the whole, the experiment, what happened to the guy, and that's it. It was really issue 2 where I started to, when we saw him in the diner and stuff like that I started to get really into the book. With the brother hunting him down and stuff, and then they had that confrontation, and we got to see that he had this training and stuff. I really started getting into it with issue 2. The ride still started going for me, whereas I didn't have that same feel with issue 1. That issue 3 and 4 have really been like kicking it up a notch for me. I'm very into this book now. But it was another one where I will honestly say with issue 1, I enjoyed it, but I wasn't like, really sold or anything. But this one, a lot faster. Issue number 2, I was like, whoa, okay, we're on board. Yeah. Edmondson really knows how to put a good action story together. Grifter's really cool. I actually, when you were talking before, I didn't know about his meta powers and stuff like that. I like that we're discovering that Grifter doesn't quite know everything he can do. He knows he can hear these aliens, but now he's finding with this Green Arrow issue that there's more that he can do that he can't explain. Like the whole catching the arrow thing. Like, how did I do that? Yeah. I like that he doesn't know yet what he can do beyond hearing alien voices, which was really kind of neat for me.
Oh, I big time echo your sentiments on that. And just it's funny because as you're talking about the pacing with this, after that first issue, because I went into this with, kind of a negative thought to it, I really wasn't, I don't want to say I didn't enjoy the issue because there was some good story moments in it. I was like, oh, okay. But I was really thinking, I'm like, hey, this is going to be the first title from the New 52 I'm dropping. And I honestly, after that first issue, was thinking, okay, this is probably going to be on the chopping block. Second issue, I was like, oh, okay, and I still wasn't. Third and fourth, especially the fourth is where things really started kicking for me. Really started getting into, I'm like, okay, there's something more to this story. There's something more to this character that I want to explore now. I do want to understand it. Now, it's not like how I felt with Mr. Terrific, where that's 100% off the chopping block. But now I'm no longer thinking, okay, this is on the block. This is not 100% safe, but it's a lot stronger and it's a lot safer just because I'm seeing what could possibly happen, and I'm actually kind of starting to think maybe off page where this could go. And as soon as that happened, as soon as I start realizing I'm thinking off page, that I'm like, okay, this is something I'm getting a connection to the character. I want to see where this goes. I want to see this development of maybe having another additional support staff for him.
Issue 1, I was lukewarm. Issue 2 is the one where I became a fan. I was a fan with issue 2. And I'll tell you what it was with issue 2 in the whole diner sequence. I bring that one up again. I loved with the girlfriend that she was suspect to what he's saying because the story's nuts. You know, and I love that she was reacting honestly to this nutso story of his and being like, what are you talking about? No way. I would be suspect of this too. And considering, her history with him, I like that we've got this, okay, this is a guy who historically has been a little unreliable, that type of stuff, especially because of his background. And we find out that he's been keeping secrets about his training and all that all along. So there's things she doesn't know about him. So now he's unveiling this stuff, and it's just adding more of an unbelievable story for her. And I love that, like, at this point in time, as of issue number 4, she still doesn't totally know his whole story. She's thrust into a situation where she's been kidnapped, and they're trying to get information from her. How much does she really know? It's real. And what the truth of the matter is, not too much, but I don't think the aliens hunting him realize that. And what happens when he here's where they've got me hooked. What happens when he finds out they've got her?
Oh, yeah.
I do not want to be... These are the aliens who are responsible for the death of his brother. Well, is the brother dead? I don't know now.
I don't think so. I think the brother's going to be coming back.
I do, too. Because wasn't that his body we saw at the end of the issue with the helicopter? Like, I know his eyes were open and stuff like that, but I couldn't tell if he was dead or not.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if he was just alien occupied, and if that was now just a husk with an alien in it, or if he was somehow okay.
In shock.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping it was Max, right? I think.
Yeah.
I'm hoping Max is still alive, but if not, God help the vengeance of Cole Cash.
Yeah, and it's funny. One of the things that I've kind of started enjoying about the issue, and I went back and I reread 1, 2, and 3, and I saw they've been doing this from the beginning, but just part of like the inner dialogue style where he's like laying out with the pieces of the con, laying it out like a grifter, laying it out like a con artist, and just it gave me just a mental connection to a TV show called Burn Notice, where the main character was this spy, and he got burned. So basically the agency just dropped him off in Miami. And so he's on his own, has no support structure. He's just got to survive, and he's got to survive there. The story, the main character plays out the narrative like, when you're a spy, you got to do this, you got to do, and he lays it out, kind of explaining to the audience what he's going through. And I kind of get that same vibe from Grifter's inner dialogue, from his explanation, and that was something I really enjoyed. It's that same style that when we talked about the Ray, how the Ray is kind of letting us into his world, letting us know what he's thinking. It's that same type of groove and connection, and that's for me the thing that really got me got me into Grifter and really had me enjoying this, is that style of communication.
When I'm looking at Grifter, one of the things that I really like, I'm looking at this Blindside page where now who's in charge here? The mask. We got to talk about that rag that's over his face, whatever. I love that, it's come to have multiple purposes, multiple meanings. I like that, he was saying that this is kind of a way to protect my family, protect, the people around me, stuff like that. You get that vibe. But I also love that when the aliens start saying you all look alike, he tells them, well, I'm going to give you something that lets you know who I am.
Yeah.
I mean, I really liked that whole segment of the whole thing. It was the point in this whole thing, I'm like, okay, action hero, kind of that type of thing. I'm, testosterone fueled. I'm into Grifter now. Yeah. I've crossed the threshold now with this guy. I'm very into him. I like that at no point in time in this issue do I feel like he and Ollie have like knuckle bumped.
Right.
And that's cool because considering where this guy's coming from, he's this con artist who's, on the run, that type of thing. His reasoning for coming to Queen Industries, I like that not all of these hero meetings have to end clean, and what is Grifter? Is he really a hero? Is he not? I don't know. He's a little bit more of a gray area, and I like that never really gets crossed with him and Ollie, and nor should it at this point in time. But I love that Ollie takes the information that he finds from Grifter and starts trying to say, I need to find out what's going on with my company, to the point where he's even spelling it wrong,
Yes.
with the alien name and that type of thing, because this is what he heard in the passing dialogue, but he's not going to just let it go. He wants to find out what's going on in Queen Industries. I like that whole thing. I mean, that was something that was a neat little segment of events. In this is another example of a good team up. It worked really well. It spotlighted, I thought, both characters. I think somebody coming off of Grifter could go over to Ollie's book, or somebody from Ollie's book could enjoy a good Grifter story, because you don't really need to know anything beforehand in order to dig this issue. But I really felt like for somebody who's been reading Grifter, it was kind of a good culmination of where the character's been so far. And there was something really strong there for anybody who's been reading Ollie's book in the team up. Very similar to what we said about the Flash appearance in Captain Atom.
Yeah. Yeah, this is... it was funny because when he came into this, when there was this great team up, that was another thing that really kind of had me locking in and had me enjoying it, because we're seeing a characterization of Green Arrow that's very true and accurate to his own book. This is the same guy as is over there, and it immediately got me thinking, okay, are we going to start seeing some crossover stuff in Green Arrow's book about, that from events here, or are they going to keep them solely in here? Is this going to be the first and only team up, or are we going to get a later partnership between these two as Ollie starts exploring stuff? And then I started thinking maybe Ollie is kind of going to be maybe later on Ollie and Queen Industry and Q-Cord will actually be able to, support, sponsor, assist Grifter. And it kind of had me thinking there could be a definite long-term team up here where Grifter and Green Arrow are either on the same page or fighting the same enemies, and definitely could be an interesting future between these two.
You know what line segment I really love? That was thought a great tiny attention to detail. What's your business with Q-Core? Green Arrow asking this of Grifter. Grifter coming back with what's yours? Sometimes that gets left out. I think that's a really important, because why would Grifter think that Green Arrow has any interest with Q-Core? You know what I mean? That was a great, I thought, little attention to detail. And then Ali comes back with, right now, keeping innocent people out of your line of fire. So, it's, this great little debate that ensues from that in this really cool action sequence. But I thought it was a really cool, tiny attention to detail. I also really love the use of technology in the new DCU. We're seeing a lot more tablets and a lot more of the technology like we actually see in people's hands right now. Those are things that I think it's really important, because the world that we're seeing in the DC Universe proper is very reflective of today's society and the kind of things that you'd see. And writers and artists are making a really cool attention to detail there. And I think it does make the world feel more current, more modern, more fleshed out.
Definitely. And it's, we keep throwing out I know I keep throwing out the term realistic and realism to it. It's definitely the tech, just the way the information's flying around there. And I love the fact that, the military, we have this kind of power struggle. There's multiple factions in this story that are, butting heads. You got your aliens, you got your cold, now you have your military and the government. You have all these different things that are coming together, and it's... in a way, it's just this really crazy melting pot that's kind of going to mesh together, and I do want to see where that goes. I do want to see, is he going to end up being a governmental agent? Is he going to be able to keep himself separate? Is he going to remain as America's Most Wanted? What's going to happen to him? Where's this going to go?
Well, it already seems like the government behind the scenes is aware of the fact that, there's these secrets that we've been keeping. That, I love that there's people behind the scenes, higher ups in the military, that are saying, wait a minute, if we knew this all along, we wouldn't be doing the things that we're doing right now. And realizing, okay, we've got a mess on our hands right now. How do we handle that? I don't know. And I like that that's not clean as well. There's something cool about that. I also, when we talk about reality, I don't need every single element of my comics to be reality. I like the fantastic. I think what I'm finding so interesting about how realistic the real cityscape is in the DC Universe, what's cool about that is you're seeing these characters like Grifter and stuff like that and Green Arrow who are doing these amazing things. I mean, these are normal people. Well, sort of, because we know Grifter's got other stuff, and, Ali's obviously, been trained to do and uses this amazing technology. But to me, the fantastic always looks more fantastic when it's framed against reality. So when you've got a very realistically crafted world, Superman looks all the more stunning, Yeah. The things that Batman and Green Arrow and Grifter and all these other characters are doing that are just out there look all the more amazing when they're framed with all this reality. So it's really cool to see a world that we feel streets that we feel like we could be driving down in all this, especially when you got Grifter doing these crazy things with his belt, like tying him around and then smashing out the window and hitting cruise control. I really loved the tiny little attention to details there, because it was something where I'm like, oh, wow, I'd love to see this on screen. I hate tailgaters. I love the one-liners and stuff like that when he's throwing them out. I don't know, I thought the whole fight between the two of them was really cool in its presentation. I should go back to something I don't use that much anymore. It was really slick.
Yeah. Oh, if ever a time to pull that out.
Because
this was a slick fight sequence, and this was something I would love to see on the big screen. Just you can kind of hear the dun 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 music going on as bullets are flying, arrows are flying, and I really dig the archery with the arrow catching the mask and taking it off, and they're trying to get an ID and document who is Grifter. That, for me, was a really cool Green Arrow moment.
I love that there seems to be so many different factions of people. Like, who is this girl from Queen Industries who comes and gets him? Obviously, there's more to her than meets the eye. I love that Ali wants to know the answers to that. is she some kind of agent? Who is she working with? Why is she helping Grifter? I have a funny feeling she's not with the aliens. I have a funny feeling that is she part military? Is she some military plant that was in there, perhaps for the purpose of getting, secrets from Q-Tech? I don't know. I like that I have lots of questions that are going on. But I'm guessing with her from now on, we're going to see her just be a part of Grifter from now on, coming off of the fact that she was in, I guess, a part of Queen's Corporation. It was kind of a cool use of her. And what does this mean for him with his girlfriend?
Well, I'm thinking she's going to be part of the team, or she was like we're looking at one of the government factions who's in, Q Corps, because it is a significant business. You need to have, when you're dealing like with the spies and just that whole secret, society, of, espionage, they're going to have their people in all of the different businesses. There's got to be a couple people in Wayne Tech Industries, Star Labs. They have their operatives everywhere, and this was their operative they probably activated, because that whole thing with the general seeing Grifter on the tablet, he probably made the call, said, okay, activate one of our people. We have to have someone there, get them to get him out. So I think we're going to see, that could be a connection leading back to the military, maybe pulling him in.
But I loved there was a little flirtation going there. The whole nice Holden, Normal-esque, got to buy me a drink first. Yeah. Who knows where that's going to go. And I like that you kind of go, is this going to be trouble down the road or not? I don't know. I love the girlfriend being captured and her having a strength to her, where she's not giving any information about Cole. So it goes to show that she's got some real feelings for him. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to come of this. It's a book that I will say Grifter's a book. Issue number 1, if you'd asked me, how do you feel about Grifter? I don't know. Issue number 2 was really clicked everything together, and I've really enjoyed this book ever since. I'm enjoying the ride to it. I think issue number 1 was essential to that, but I'm so glad that I wasn't making my decision based on issue 1.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, the position I am right now is completely different than I was issue 1. I'm still not, so locked in saying this is the greatest book ever, but I am so much more comfortable with it, so much more into the title, and looking forward to seeing what's going to happen next and what's going to go on down the pipeline.
So we're actually in different places about Grifter. I'm really digging this book, and you're not saying you hate it, but you're you're in a position where you're like, I'm kind of lukewarm. I'm entertained, but I'm not knocking you. I'm actually just trying to sum up. We're actually in different places on this one.
Yeah, we're definitely in different places. It's funny because I don't want to say I'm lukewarm on it. I am enjoying. I'm at the stage where I'm enjoying it, and I'm at the stage where I'm looking forward to the next story. I'm not passionate about it yet. I'm not at the point like the place I am with Mr. Terrific. When issue 5 comes out, it won't be the top of the stack. It will be one of the bottom of the stack. And if something happens where I could actually even roll this over into next week, because but I will get to it, and I'm not in the place where I'm going to drop it. I think it's as time goes on, as more of this plays out, there's definitely potential here for me to be a really strong supporter of this. I'm just not there yet.
See, and I'm at a different place where I'm excited. Issue 5 is going to be in my short stack because I want to know what's going to happen with the girlfriend. I want to know what the deal is with this operative. I want to know if the brother's alive. I want to know more about what is going on with him that he can't quite put a finger on yet because he doesn't know. I'm into it. I mean, they've really got me hooked in a lot of those things. And actually, it's kind of fun to have a discussion like this where we're in two different places on a book because that's natural. For that to happen. But I will say I'm passionate about Grifter right now. And it's a character who I have a history with, but not as a solo character like this, and certainly not in our universe. Very similar to Voodoo, one of the things that I'm digging about Grifter right now is they didn't try to force the Wildstorm Grifter into the DC universe. They crafted him from the ground up using what really worked from his Wildstorm origins to craft a Grifter that works in our world, but it's taken time for him to get to be a lot closer to the Grifter that we're used to from Wildstorm. And I will say by now I'm starting to feel a lot more of the Wildstorm character in there. He's not quite at where he's at from my Wildcats reading yet, but that was more of a seasoned veteran that I was used to reading in like Alan Moore's and James Robinson's run on Wildcats. I really got a vibe for this is a seasoned guy wearing the Grifter outfit, that type of thing. I'm not in that place with this guy yet. I really like him, though. I'm liking the exploration of him, a lot of the action stuff that I'm seeing here. But it really was, for me, it sounds like the book's been lifting up our stack at different times. For me, it was right away at issue 2. For you, it seems to be something that's going a lot more gradual than it was for me. And that's cool. It's a fun discussion to kind of wind up at that point at the end. Grifter's a cool book, though, and I'm looking very forward to issue 5.
Spinning with great speed, the Flash creates a protective vacuum around himself.
Hey, Sean and Jim. This is Amir, long-time listener, and, I guess a year. I heard about you guys through the Fixers Hideout and Comic Tube, and I wanted to say, you guys do a great job. You keep positive, actually, because all the other podcasts I hear are, we hate the new 52 and everything, but I'm loving it. Not all the books. I mean, I had to drop a few, like, I'm dropping Superman because I'm not a big Superman fan, but I am loving Action Comics more. And, let's see, I had to drop Savage Hawkman, like, I don't know, it's like I never had a big connection with Hawkman, but I did trade Savage, Hawkman, and Superman for Aquaman and Swamp Thing. Like, those were two amazing books. Like, I thought Swamp Thing was like, oh, Swamp Thing, he's a swamp dude, but I picked up the book and I'm loving every page of it. Aquaman, I thought, oh, he's just some wussy king. He can't beat Batman or anything, but I'm loving everything about Aquaman. And let's see. And you guys keep doing a great job, and I'll hopefully call you later. See ya. Bye.
I like this guy. One of the things that I really liked about his call was I like, first of all, don't ever hesitate to call in and say, hey, I dropped this title, traded for that title. I like that kind of stuff. And he talked about, like, I'm liking Action Comics more than Superman. So, this is why I did a trade-off as far as that goes. I'm not really much of a Superman guy, but Action Comics seems to be more of my vibe right now. And it was cool to hear Swamp Thing. I'm not into the whole Swamp Dude thing, but I'm liking this book. And Aquaman, obviously, for obvious reasons, it's cool to see him. Aquaman, one of the things I love about Aquaman is the fact that Aquaman's addressing kind of the perception of Aquaman in it. So it's kind of cool. I like that kind of trade-off kind of thing. It actually fits a lot of what our discussion about Grifter we just had with the two of us. It's we were in different places on Grifter. And I have a funny feeling if you and I had to right now chop down some of our books, I'm not chopping Grifter, but Grifter would probably be chopped earlier for you than it would be for me. Whereas for me, I would protect Grifter a lot stronger, and there might be other titles that would go before Grifter because I'm really enjoying it. But so it's kind of cool to have a conversation like that with when somebody calls in to talk about some of the trade-offs they're making, because we all make trade-offs. Every one of us do. You and I do. Yeah,
and I like when people if you're dropping one title, take a listen, take a look. See maybe there's something else out there that is for you. This book, our passion is, about, it's not a cheap hobby. So if you're not getting that great fire, if you're not having that passion about it, look for something that is giving it to you, and look for that, that thing where you have that connection to it. It's, and there's so much out there. There's so much really good stuff coming down the line from DC that if something's not completely jiving with you, maybe there's another title out there. Maybe there's something else that, will catch your attention. That's why we always tell people, talk about what you're passionate about. about. Tell somebody, share with somebody, what you're loving, what book is really hitting, and why is it, in that? Why do you have that, that rage about it? Why do you want, other people to read this? Because there's somebody out there who's not 100% locked in on their title. They're looking for something. They're looking for a place to go. Give them that title. Show them, what they're missing. Tell them, hey, have you tried this? Well, give it a read through. It's a really cool story.
I feel like I should put a TM after some of your stuff when you say it. That rage about it. Trademark. I want to give a shout out to DeFixer's Hideout and ComicTube. Some very good friends. Actually, it's more than two very good friends. I actually want to shout out though Daryl Taylor, who's been a long-time friend of the show, who actually called in last episode, and Umar over at DeFixer's Hideout. We met them in New York Comic-Con
multiple times.
Yeah. I remember the first time we met them.
Yes.
It was great to have that first meeting with them, and really, we really are part of a podcasting community of just terrific podcasters. And I've said it before on the show, and I'm a broken record with it, but one of the things I really do like about the podcasting community is there's nothing cookie cutter about any of the podcasts out there. If Raging Bullets is your first podcast and we're not your cup of tea, there's a ton of podcasts out there to listen to. And don't think, because we're not your cup of tea that you won't find one that you enjoy. And vice versa. We've gotten a lot of listeners from other podcasts where they've been kind enough to shout us out, and I think it's a nice energy where we share listening base, we have our own listening base, and it gets kind of fun. People have the opportunity to eventually find that podcast they were looking for. ComicTube, our good friend Leroy, aka Ziggo, from the forums, we met him so many times at the cons, and it's really great to have this kind of community of people who we really are genuinely friends with and genuinely respect and really appreciate. There's no advertising budget in podcasting. So when you guys, the listening audience, fellow podcasters and things like that, shout us all out, it's that networking and that community aspect of podcasting. It's one of the reasons why I periodically give shout outs to other podcasts, blogs, whatever. If there's something we can do to shout you out, please let us know. Feel free to call into our show, shoot me an email, say, hey, can you please put up a link, whatever. I always want to do those things because people have been so kind doing that to us. And this listener is a great example of that. So thanks for that.
G'day, Sean. G'day, Jim. It's Brad again from Australia. Once again, messing with the format of the show because I'm not talking about a comic this time. I've just watched the Dark Knight Rises trailer along with the other 5 million people on YouTube, and many people adding it to their Facebook profiles, I see. And just wanted to give you my quick thoughts. Yeah, wow. I'm speechless, which doesn't help because I'm trying to give you a voicemail. So I'll expand on that a little bit. Looks amazing. I love the way Bane looks. I like the fact that he doesn't have the whole Mexican luchador type thing going on with his balaclava type costume thing. I like that he has a muzzle. It looks very much like someone who's escaped from a high security prison. It's a bit of a Hannibal Lecter type thing going on there with that muzzle that he's wearing. Big coat. Obviously, Bane can slough that off at any time and reveal that massive venomed physique that he gets stuck in. Selena, Catwoman, just looks amazing. Stunningly beautiful. She very much comes across as a femme fatale from an old film noir. Even the outfit we see her wearing as she's going through the airport or the train station, wherever it is, with the big wide-brimmed hat, the simple black dress, very much speaks of that film noir, 30s kind of fashion. I like it. It harkens back to her origins as a character that was created in the late 30s. And also fits in really well with this sort of neo-noir Gotham City that Chris Nolan's created for the trilogy. Beautiful. I like the fact that she has the little cat mask during the masquerade ball. And it looks like she's able to use that to deceive people. We have the shot later on where Bruce is talking to the attractive young lady in the red who also has a cat mask, but we see that it's not Selena. So it looks like she's setting things up there as a distraction. Also liked the fact that Selena was wearing pearls. We all know how big a broken pearl necklace and scattering its jewels on the ground. You know how important that is to the Batman mythos. So I like that little touch as well. Lots and lots of great action scenes. Batman's got a big gun. Tumbler gets destroyed. And then there's a big tank and a bat wing. My God, man, there's going to be so many cool things. I also like the fact that Bane looks like he's becoming a leader of the dispossessed, and that the criminal element, that sort of seedy underworld that Bruce challenged early in the first film. It was when he goes to the crime boss and says, you know, he's going to clean things up. I really liked that. It's almost setting things up as a poor people taking out the rich people, which is very resonant in the post-GFC world that we're in. Looks like Gordon's going to be under pressure as well. He's a war hero, but the mayor's still going to dump him, so bad times ahead for Jim Gordon. And one of the things I enjoyed the most, it's silly and probably way wrong on this, but I like the fact that the guy playing Gridiron, who's running down the field as everything's collapsing and scores a touchdown, we turn around and we see his name is Ward. I reckon that's a bit of a homage there to great Burt Ward, who played Robin. Maybe that's how they can get Robin into the trilogy. Not as Robin, of course, but just as a bloke whose name is Ward. And he was wearing yellow. Maybe not red and green and yellow, so it's probably not. But I did like that little Easter egg. It's very close to Christmas, so before I leave, I'd like to wish you both a very, very Merry Christmas and a happy and safe festive season. Look forward to hearing your amazing podcast again next year. So from me, Jim, Sean, have a great Christmas, boys, and I'm sure I'll hassle you again before too long. Okay, thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
Well, first of all, very happy holidays to you as well. And thank you for participation in the show. You've called in a lot this year, and I mean that in a good way. I actually really like, for any listener out there, please feel free to call in. We like you a part of the show. I actually really love the different perspectives. I look forward to like when I see Brett's phone call, I look forward to it. I look forward to seeing like what's Brett going to say now. And, you know, you aren't jumping off what our normal MO is for the show. I mean, that's a very DC call that you called in about. And honestly, if you guys got something you want to call in about that you think's relevant to the show, call in, because I really like what Brett does. He's got an idea. He's like, this would be interesting to throw out there, and this is. I really like. I don't know if you've seen the trailer. Jim, have you seen the trailer?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things I really liked about what Bane was setting up there is Nightfall. I mean, he is unleashing the criminal element onto Gotham. But I like how Brett was connecting that with a lot of, people rising up today and, the poor rising up and things like that. There is a very contemporary notion to that. But it's definitely overwhelming Gotham in a way that's going to affect the Dark Knight. I am hoping that they don't end this I'm hoping they end this in such a way where Batman is still operating in Gotham when this is done. Like, I don't want this to be the end of Batman,
right?
Per se. That's my only. I don't want to say concern, because I've really liked the Nolan films, so I'm not really concerned about this at all. I think it's going to be terrific because the first two were terrific. I love them. I've liked Nolan's films in general. I like things like Insomnia. I liked, any other things that he's done with Christian Bale, for example, have been terrific. Inception was amazing. So I don't know. I'm in Nolan we trust. I'm there. So I don't know. The trailer for me was very satisfying. I loved with Selena that sleek, sexy, but intelligent and skirting that edge. She's lecturing Bruce about how, the people at the top are going to finally see that, everything that they've had, they aren't. She's really was arguing against the sense or her perception of these people having entitlement. And I like that. I don't know, something kind of interesting about, social class warfare and stuff like that, which actually adds a lot of weight to what to Brett was saying. And can Batman bring these people together? Because there had this, perception of peace in Gotham, it seems, at the start of the film. And that perception of peace is going to be quickly shattered.
Yeah, oh yeah. This was one of those things where I needed, I heard people talking about it. I was like, oh, okay. And it wasn't until I actually sat down and watched it that I really, really started getting excited for the book, for the new movie. And, I heard a couple, I heard positive, heard negative stuff from it. I've heard both sides of the discussion about Bane's look, and I actually had to really see it and see him. What little we saw him in action, to get, I gotta, it's. I'm digging this. I think this is, I'm confident with it. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm not as concerned as I was before. You said it before. Nolan we trust. He's done 2 great movies, 2 movies that I absolutely loved. No point for me to think that the third one wouldn't be the hat trick. So, I needed to see something like this. I needed to see something more than just an image or just a quick blip. I needed to see something play out.
You have to also remember, too, this is a trailer.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole film.
Yeah, there's a lot more coming. And
so that's part of the time, a lot of times there's a lot of this negative outrage at these trailers. I'm like, really? It's a trailer. Like, this isn't the movie. And a trailer is, before there's so much more that has to go into the film before that trailer becomes, first of all, you could have the insane positive from the trailer,
right,
and that could be misleading. You know what I mean? It's like, they're still trailers. Until you actually see the film, you don't know how you feel one way or another on it. I thought it was a very good trailer. I was very excited for it. I guess there was some controversy over Bane's voice. I don't remember watching the trailer and being like, wow, I really dislike Bane's voice. Did you have any issue with it?
No, because it was... it wasn't the voice in my head whenever I read a good Bane story, but again, it's the same thing. This is the movie voice. This is the movie Bane, and I'm not going to sit there and say, "Oh, it should be different." I was okay with it because it is different. This is a different person, but there are some of the cool elements of Bane is that he's not just physically powerful; that he is mentally powerful as well.
Well, see, I guess I've had the advantage of having a Bane voice in my head that I created for myself, and then multiple animated Bane voices, and then that goopy Bane voice from, what was it, Batman and Robin, I think that he was in there. Well, yeah,
I call him Veggie Boy. He's not
right.
Bane.
He's not
That's
Bane.
Veggie Boy.
But I'm saying, like, taking Veggie Boy out of it, I don't know if I agree with the Veggie Boy thing, but taking Veggie Boy out of it, because your sentiment of the fact that we should forget about him is totally... The multiple animated versions of Bane, which I thought were very good, but those were already off my perception of what Bane's voice was like, because I didn't have the accent on him, because I wouldn't have known to put an accent on him, even though I should have because of his background. I don't know. I don't have a perception of what Bane should sound like. It sounded great to me. I think its tone and theme looks really solid for Bane. I was glad to see Nightfall elements in this. Yeah. That's the best of Bane was a Bane who was the strategist. And it looks like we're going to see that in this. It's not just going to be the thug. We're going to see the strategist. He should be a big, strong guy who can, do these amazing physical feats and stuff like that. Yes, but it's also the strategist. This agent who causes chaos in Gotham to accomplish a smart strategic goal. And that's it's different than the Joker. The Joker was an agent of chaos for creating chaos for the sake of showing, what chaos brings to the world, that type of thing. This guy uses chaos for a strategic reason, Bane. And not that he always uses chaos, but in this case, that's what Nightfall was all about. Creating chaos to wear down the Bat. To do something that nobody else could do to break the Bat. I want to see the Dark Knight rise from it.
Yeah, he's going to step up and he's going to throw down, and that's some of the stuff I'm looking forward to seeing where and how this goes, and especially if there's probably not going to be a fourth, with these people, so there's got to be a definitive ending to this, and I think we will get a cool hoorah ending.
Well, Bale said this is it for him. And I'm almost 110% positive that Nolan said the same thing. This is it.
Yeah.
So, this is going to be the final coup de grace. But I want to see, I'm hoping there's an ending to me, with The Dark Knight Rises being the title of this one. I want to see him broken. and I want to see The Dark Knight Rise. I want to see him fight his way back. I want to see it. I don't care how it happens. I want to see the ending where we see that iconic Batman that we've seen in this film so many times looking over his city, in this film series. They've done it so well. I want them to have that satisfying ending, and I think we're going to get it. I just, I like that I'm concerned because I think I should be right now. I'm concerned for Batman. You know what I mean? I think you should be going into the film concerned for Batman. That's part of the journey. So I like that I'm there. They're like, it was a good trailer because I feel like I should be concerned from Batman from the trailer.
Yeah, and it didn't give away too much.
Right.
I always hate it when trailers give away too much. It gave you enough to give you a taste and get you excited, but it didn't spoil the movie for you.
Yeah. It's a good teaser and a taste.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious to see how Catwoman plays into the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm digging her as Catwoman. I really am.
I hope this is one of those films where I feel like it should be like an 8-hour movie when I'm done. Yeah. You're like, wait, what do you mean done? There needs to be more. I hope. Because, I don't know, the series, I think, has been perfect all the way through. Nolan's done his own Nolan version of the Batverse, and I like that. I don't have a problem with it. Because the core was there, which is essential for me. The core was there of what makes Batman cool. And so if this is the end of this particular storytelling version, great. Let it end off really nice, and let's go on to whatever's going to happen next. Because there's lots of places to go with these characters. So, I don't know. We'll see what's going to go next. Let the game team take over. People writing these Arkham games, I don't know. Let them take, Paul Dini, let him take over and write something. I don't know. Good stuff.
There it is, going into that tunnel.
I want to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434. That's 1-440-388-4434, or Dr. Norge on Skype. We love having you part of the show, so please feel free to call in with any of your thoughts on comics and where DC's heading, and even DC of the past. We had a lot of listeners who called in sometimes with their favorite DC stories from the past they just want to shout out and let people know about. So please definitely consider doing that, and we love your participation. Also want to remind everyone, speaking of participation, we have a wonderful show forum community. We have a Facebook group. We are on Facebook as well with a regular Facebook page. Google+, Twitter. We have a Twitter account. I tend to do a lot of updates right from the website that are fished right out to Twitter because we have a handy little program that lets us pump that right out to Twitter. So if you're not on our Twitter feed, please consider doing that if you want to know updates on the podcast episodes and stuff like that. But I want to thank everybody for the past year. Any of those things that I've just mentioned, if you participated in there, I try to pop in as much as I can in between preparing for the show, editing the show, and just, life in general to try and check in on conversations and stuff. But I want to really tell our listening community how much I appreciate all of you for just keeping the discussion going when Jim and I aren't recording. It's always great to see that some of the things, the topics, whether you agree, disagree, or you got new thoughts or different ideas on things we were discussing, even corrections on things where we were horribly misguided, myself especially. I really appreciate that. I love seeing that people actually want to talk more about some of the things that we've been discussing on the show. I love seeing your thoughts. So thank you for everybody, whatever avenue you've participated on beyond the podcast. I really appreciate it, especially if it's shouting out the show. In the past year, we've seen a nice surge in our listening base, and I really attribute that to all of you. Whether you told a single friend, you mentioned us on a forum, at your local comic shop, wherever, you let people know about our podcast. We really appreciate that. We don't have an advertising budget for this show. This really is a labor of love. We're lucky enough to have sponsors that help, make us break even on this show, which is really terrific. But it's you guys that are letting people know about our podcast that has really had this surge come up of new audience base. And I really want to welcome everyone to the show who's new this year, but also want to thank longtime listeners who've been shouting out and bringing new people in, because it's great to just have this community. It makes what Jim and I are doing worthwhile. So I just really want to thank all of you at the end of the year, just kind of let you know we really appreciate it. I hope all of you have an amazing beginning to 2012. We'll be back once again podcasting 4 times a month with you in 2012, and we're heading to episode 300, which looks like it's going to air in March. So, we got a big year ahead of us. This will be our 6th year in podcasting anniversary, and episode 300 as well. Looks like it's going to be in the same month, so it's going to be kind of cool how that worked out. But I just want to tell you once again that we appreciate you guys. Our next episode, Jim, we're going to continue our exploration of the New 52. And in January, actually, we have coming, instead of the Raging Oscars this year, we're going to be doing DC, the New 52, in 1 line each. You and I are going to be limited to 1 line each to describe what we think of each of the books of the New 52, or, sum up the new books, which I think is going to be very interesting. Now, here's a question I've got for you, because this is, as we're fleshing this out, are we then going to discuss that, or are we just going to move on?
I don't know. If we do our one line and then discussion, we're talking at least 15 minutes per book.
Right. So we'll just do 1 line each, and then maybe save a summary discussion at the end. But there's
going to be some stuff that we're going to have to.
Yeah.
Come on. We know each other well enough that one of us, or probably me, is gonna say something that's gonna have you going, "What the heck are you talking about?"
Oh yeah, I mean, and that's gonna be fun of it. Yeah. No, so I guess we can't really put a gag order. We have to just kind of let it organically. Some books will just leave it at 1 line each and move along, and then other books, because otherwise we won't be able to get through them all.
Yeah.
So, and then just there'll be those ones where those head scratches where we're like, okay, what do you mean? That's what it'll be. It'll be the ones where we need clarification. We'll just naturally go from there, because you and I aren't going to know what the other's going to say. Have you started working on this?
Yes.
I did too. It's a little. Wait, what was I thinking?
I know, man.
That's hard. This is very hard to do.
The ones I have so far, there's a couple of them that was very boom, 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 and I think it's going to fire off. But there's a couple I know that you're going to say, "What the hell are you talking about?"
I think we're going to have that same thing on both sides.
Oh yeah,
and that's going to be fun. I'm having books that I'm having a hard time fitting in everything I want to say into 1 line, which is why I liked the idea from the get-go, because I figured that we're going to have to get creative to leave it at 1 line for the books. I think it'd be kind of fun.
A couple of them, and I have to take a really big breath before I start, if it's all going to be 1 line.
Mm-hmm. But it'll be a good way, I think, just to kind of do a year-end summary. It'll be kind of a different sort of show. So, I don't know. We welcome, actually, listener contributions as well. So please feel free to send in your voicemails and stuff like that throughout the month of January, because what we can always do is air those beyond the episode as well. So, because I don't know, we haven't decided yet. We're going to wait till we're finished compiling everything before we actually do this. Are we going to say just main monthly books? Because that'll be 52 titles then, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Okay, I'm in the same boat, so we'll go that route. So the New 52 in 1 line each. And so, Jim, next week we will come back with some more of the books that we have not yet explored out of the New 52, continuing our exploration. And I want to wish everyone at this point a very happy holiday season, whatever you celebrate or don't. Just hope you and your families have a great year. And we will see you all next week.
Bye.
Flying through space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Faded for love and flaws and incredibly clear sightlines. Swinging your mace around, such a practical outlook. Helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman. The villains are closing in, be they Thanin Guard or Egyptian. Working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things would be so much easier if you would just call for backup. Hawkman, Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see your plan and what you do Hawkman.